Turks, live from the Polymarket Studios in LA. I'm your host, Cenk. Anna's on vacation, bad day for it, but it's okay, God bless. I'm gonna go old school. I'm gonna do the first hour solo, then I'm gonna bring in Jordan, then we're gonna bring in Representative Khanna, we're gonna bring Adam Green for the progressive perspective. We got it all for you guys today. Kind of a big day, isn't it? And oh, by the way, a lot of people have already written in, Wang Jun, ACGC, etc., that this is going to be the Cenk was right episode of the Young Turks. Now, in the beginning, you're going to be spectacularly right. But later, I instantly take a big L. Interesting. Okay, hold. That's all the first hour. Today is, of course, amazing, bananas, historic. So sharing is caring, share the stream. Let's do this. And without further ado, let's start our first story. Hit it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Wait, hold on, we got confused there. That's okay, sorry Kate, that's my bad, that's our producer. I meant Bart, so bring back Jover. Let's do this again, let's do it right, okay? And first, Bart, hit it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
All right, so listen, not too much celebration. The celebration is about Joe Biden did the right thing, and I'm gonna give him huge credit here in a second. And we now can beat Donald Trump. That's what you should be excited about. So in terms of Joe Biden, what's done is done. Let history deal with how his record is viewed. I'm about to give you his final hours and his days as he was a candidate giving up power. And that is a really interesting story that tells you all you need to know about politics. But before we do any of that, just a tip of the hat to Joe Biden, who did something that Donald Trump refused to do. Yeah, you might say it was late, and I would say that it was late. I wish he had done it earlier. I wish he'd done it a year earlier. We'll talk about that in a second. I wish he'd done it 3 weeks earlier. Having said all that, when Donald Trump lost an election, he still couldn't let go of power. And he did a fake elector scheme, he did a coup against America. Joe Biden, still well ahead of the election, when he saw the handwriting on the wall, he did the right thing and he stepped aside for the good of his party and for the good of his country. Was it dragging and kicking? Yes, I'm gonna give you the details on that in a second. But the bottom line is, credit where credit is due when someone gets to the correct decision, which is exactly where Joe Biden wound up. So now, before I tell you his final hours, let me show you a clip from a little bit earlier in Young Turks history, not too long ago, and then that'll give you the context for what you're about to hear about the Joe Biden story in the last couple of days. Let's watch. So I want to ask you, if you're an average Democratic voter, do you think that this is your fault? Or do you think maybe it's Joe Biden's fault and Democratic leadership's fault for trying to placate his gigantic ego and saying, oh, I am the greatest, only I can defeat Trump. Even if I'm 81 and can't finish a sentence, it has to be me. No hope, no prayer. He cannot win this on his own without his own party backing him. He's just dragging it out because of his colossal Uranus-sized ego. It was a curious planet to choose. Okay, so if you've been watching the Young Turks, you heard me say that many times. So now let's go to a story from NBC News. It's gonna be backed up by a similar story out of CNN. First, they explained that on the last day, quote, isolated, frustrated, and angry, he felt betrayed by allies who turned on him in his hour of need. See, I wanna pause here to tell you guys, listen guys, this was never about Joe Biden, but he made it about Joe Biden. He made it about his feelings, and he was angry and you should have had my back. But brother, this was never about you. It was about winning. It was about beating Donald Trump. It was about protecting democracy. So unfortunately, I told you guys that he made it about his own ego and his own feelings when he should have never done that, and this story confirms it. So for the first time, I gotta show you this. Okay, but I'm not done with it. Okay, so now we move on to the obnoxious part of our proceedings. So number 2 quote here. Mad as he was and still is, NBC explains, Biden came grudgingly to accept that he could not sustain his campaign with poll numbers slipping, donors fleeing, and party luminaries pushing him to the exit. Also exactly what we told you, okay? And you've now seen me say this dozens of times. And in fact, here's another video that explains it from the past.
Now reporting out about how the donors are very upset. They felt that they were misled, etc. And everybody's furious at the internal staff of Biden. The donors aren't going to give any more money to this guy. They've already, Axios reporting they're shifting the dollars to House and Senate races because now they're deathly afraid that they're going to lose the House and the Senate. And Trump is going to have Congress. He's going to have a mandate.
There's only one set of people who could actually take Joe Biden out. And that, unfortunately, is not the voters. It's not the senators who are now in open rebellion. It's the donors. And it's the donors that put him into place. It's the donors that are his source of power. So if he loses that source of power, he has no power left and has to withdraw. All right, let's give you another quote that confirms exactly how it went down, just as we explained earlier on the Young Turks. So NBC reporting major donors cut off money to his campaign and the party. In drip, drip, drip fashion, elected officials started to call for him to drop his bid. Sorry, but told you. The donors run this place. Guys, we do the told you and all that stuff and show you the earlier clips, both because it's fun, but mainly because you see that these things are predictable. So when they tell you, oh, they have ideological debates and they're having a policy discussion within the Democratic or Republican Party, nonsense. No, the donors control. And the only other set of people that were relevant here, as I explained to you in dozens of other clips, were the Democrats in Congress because they're going to lose their elections and the polling indicated that. So now let's go to the next quote from CNN this time. When Biden huddled with his 2 closest advisors Saturday, the information they provided on polling and where top Democratic officials stood underscored that a path to victory was, quote, basically non-existent, according to another person familiar with the matter. Sorry, but told you. So, and here's another important reason why I'm doing that. Because guys, when I said he had a near zero chance of winning, these same people said, outrageous, ridiculous, how dare you? I mean, maybe he slipped a 49 or 48% chance of winning. And tons, literally millions of good people in this country believed them that it was a super close race. So when I said it was near zero, people were like, oh, you're crazy, no way. Okay, maybe he slipped to a tiny bit of an underdog, but easy to come back. No, his inside guys knew all along. Look at that. His pathway to victory was, quote, basically non-existent. And then right after he dropped out, all of a sudden the MSNBC host like Rachel Maddow turned right around and admitted he had, quote, a near zero chance of winning. Just like we've been telling you for weeks. After the debate, he was already done. Look, before the debate, he was already going to lose. But after the debate, it led to a slippery slope that he couldn't get out of because people began to realize how done he was. And then they were abandoning him, mainly the donors, but then the Congress people. And of course, MSNBC wouldn't let go until the dear leader said, oh, it's okay, I give you permission to tell the truth for like a day, and then we're gonna go back to propaganda for Kamala Harris. And so MSNBC went from Joe Biden's definitely gonna win, why is everybody panicking, to all of a sudden, oh yeah, he had a near zero chance of winning. Of course, we all knew that. No, your viewers didn't know that at all because you were misleading them the entire time. So now, back to NBC News, now reporting afterwards on the last couple of days. Friends had told him that he was risking his legacy as a man who defeated Donald Trump and enacted a series of major laws and could end up becoming a scapegoat if Democrats get clobbered in November. In 2020, he had promised to be a bridge candidate. In the end, he did not want to be a bridge between 2 Trump terms. This is another thing we told you. What did I say was the number one thing that could get Biden out of this race? Not any appeal to logic or facts or the Democratic Party, etc., but an appeal to his ego, and both the upside and the downside of it. And the downside of it is the more relevant one here because The one and only thing you care about is your precious legacy. So your legacy is going to get destroyed if you continue in this race and lose to Donald Trump. And boom, here we are. NBC reporting afterwards, CNN backing it up, saying his main concern was his legacy, that he would ruin his legacy. Oh, so it was about Joe Biden's ego after all. And it was true that that was the one thing he cared about. Look, this isn't about beating up Joe Biden. He's done, he did the right thing at the end. I just want you to know that when the actors on TV tell you that the politicians are earnest, honest, wonderful, decent, sweet people, no, it's all theater. In reality, politicians are the most egotistical people in the whole country, even the ones you like. You think it's only the bad guys on the other side, whether you're a Republican or Democrat? I'm sorry to tell you this, and for a lot of people, this is the most obvious thing in the world, but for a lot of people who grew up watching television, where they grew up on fairy tales, it's kind of heartbreaking to find out even the politicians on your side are egomaniacs, and that they only care about their so-called legacy. So that's the situation, and now, after the fact, confirmed by mainstream media. Let's keep going. Now, on NBC News, they got a quote from Cedric Richmond, who was a White House official, one of the top campaign people for Joe Biden, used to be a congressman, and now is a huge establishment and Joe Biden backer. He said, once money dries up and elected officials pull their support, quote, it's impossible to win, and he's always put country and party first. Well, okay, sorry, but told you, not exactly. He didn't put country and party first until he realized that the donor money had dried up. But I appreciate the admission on that front. And now, finally, when we get to what was happening and how he was making the decision, NBC explains, an integral member of Biden's reelection team found out after a family member read a news alert. The person noted how everyone around Biden was taken by surprise, particularly after some of Biden's closest allies were on Sunday shows pushing for his candidacy. So basically, he got mad at the end, and again, all the stories confirm this. And instead of doing what I thought he should have done all along, which is immaculate planning. Hey, is it going to be Kamala Harris? If it's Kamala Harris, how do we do this launch? How do I coordinate with everybody in the party to make sure we're all on the same page? No, he got angry and he was like, all right, let's just release the letter online on Instagram and on Twitter. He barely called a couple of people. He called Kamala Harris, his own chief of staff, which he was apparently not checking with and was not among his inside advisors. His most internal advisors were only a couple of people, which is mainly his family and his family staff. The person he seemed to listen to most was the First Lady's chief of staff. I think that's super weird. It doesn't matter because that decision's been made. But the bottom line is, no, he didn't do immaculate planning, and that's why Kamala Harris' endorsement wasn't even in the first letter. He didn't do any video, he didn't do any announcement in person. He forgot to include Kamala Harris because he was mad. Look, I'm not trying to make fun of Joe Biden. I'm trying to tell you, all of these politicians are egomaniacs. And if you want to influence them, it sucks. But you got to play hardball and you got to bruise their ego a little bit. I'm telling you this so you know what to do in the future, because everyone in mainstream media will say, no, never bruise their ego. That is the most precious thing in the world. You all have to be super polite, super deferential, and whatever you do, obey Democratic leadership. Look at this, total chaos, didn't coordinate, acted out of anger, passion, and emotion because his feelings were hurt about his legacy. Just like we told you on the Young Turks, and we've been telling you for a long, long time. Last things, look at this one. A member of Biden's reelection team said, no one knew, Kamala didn't even know. This is horrific planning, and it's acting out of pique. So there was no secret plan. Oh, we were biding our time so we could do this right and that right. I thought maybe they were getting the delegates in order, barely. No, this is a sad indictment of the last couple of days here. Now back to CNN. Biden called some Democrats over the weekend who were out on TV on his behalf. Two told CNN that the president voiced his gratitude and then his anger at those who were trying to push him out. There was, quote, there was some hurt in his voice, but mostly anger, one of the Biden loyalists said. Well, that puts a lie to Cedric Richmond telling us it was about putting party and country above himself. He was super mad that people were not backing him, whether he was going to be the best candidate or the worst candidate, and all the polling indicated he was the worst candidate. given the current situation. But he was like, I don't care. I don't care. They should support me because my feelings are hurt. That is not putting party above, putting country or party above yourself. Last one from NBC. Here's a man who has always talked about dignity, a longtime Biden ally said, and what was happening to him in a very public setting was undignified. Where does a president go to get his dignity back? Well, I'll tell you where he goes. He goes back a year and does this right and goes, oh, well, obviously my faculties are slowing down. I'm not the man I used to be. I could barely walk. And guys, I keep forgetting what I'm saying all the time. Hey, First Lady, Chief of Staff, congressional leaders, do you guys see anything wrong? Are you a little concerned? Maybe we should do debate prep way ahead of time. Maybe we should consider other people for the nomination. Those are all the things you could have done to leave in a dignified way. But instead, he's like, no, 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 me. It's gotta be me, right? And now, all the media that told you he was the greatest, sweetest old grandpa from Scranton and just the most empathetic man you've ever imagined, now that he's gone and out of power, they all admit, yeah, he was obsessed with himself, obsessed with his emotions, legacy, career, ego, and barely thinking about what's right for the Democratic Party. How in the world do we beat Donald Trump? You see me animated more than anyone else on how do we beat Trump? How do we get the best candidate to beat Trump? He's barely thinking about it. He's thinking about, oh, should I be 2 terms or 1 term, etc. Look, last time, it's over. And thank you, Joe Biden, for making the right decision. We appreciate it. It's definitely not too late. And he did it in enough time. And it is a giant contrast to Donald Trump, who couldn't get to this point, who couldn't ever let go, who proved to be Gollum and chasing after Precious over and over again. So Joe Biden did the right thing. And I talked about his good record in the videos I made over the weekend. You should check those out. But the bottom line is, for these politicians, do not believe them when they tell you, oh my God, I care about you so much. And so I have all these ideas and principles and I'm trying to get that done for you. No, unfortunately, almost all of them are obsessed with themselves. All right, now we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, is it already over? Kamala Harris, is she already the new nominee? Well, I'm gonna give you some facts on that that'll be very clear. We'll be right back. Let's do social break. A lot of you have similar thoughts, although you got one of you has a suggestion that I enjoy. Don't shoot, I'm the goalkeeper says solo Cenk hour. Hold on to your butts. Okay, well, I appreciate that excitement. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, hi all, I agree with Cenk with what Cenk said earlier. This has gone from the most boring election ever to the most exciting election in our lifetimes within the span of just a few weeks. Look guys, we almost lost both candidates within the span of 1 week. You know, 1 more inch and both candidates would be gone in 1 week. And that is unbelievable, unbelievable. So Turkosaurus Rex says, quick poll, today Cenk will be A, smug, B, reserved, C, insufferable, D, hilarious. I kind of like those options. You know what? Let's do a snap poll on it. Let's see what the American people think. So you guys got it from here. We'll put that up, I'll report back on it. We're having nothing but fun. Cenk's left tricep of fury wrote in, let's be honest, on a day like today, Cenk needs to go solo. Love your brother, LOL. Happy to do this. Rage Against the Machine says solo Cenk day. I miss solo Cenk days. I'm here for it. Hashtag Cenk was right. I'm not saying anything, but the people on the streets, they're saying things. Okay, Uriah Heap says, let's thank Donald Trump over his superior performance of the debate. If he didn't show strength with all of his BS lies, we would have still have Biden losing 1, 2, 3. Thanks, Donnie. Yeah, there's a little bit of irony there, but it wasn't much to thank Donald Trump from. He was a disaster in the debate too. It's just that Biden was a bigger disaster. So it's not like Trump knocked him out. Trump's debate performance was like a 2 out of 10. It's just that Biden's was a -12. Camp Corona Dad said, I'm gonna pull a Cenk here. I've been predicting this in the comments since last year. Not only that he would drop out, but that it would be late enough that there wouldn't be a chance for a progressive to get in the race. Here we are, maybe it wasn't a planned strategy, or was it? Okay, first of all, I'm not sure that I'm down for pulling a Cenk bragging about being right, but I could live with it. Maybe that's not so bad. Anyways, look guys, no, it wasn't about delaying it so a progressive couldn't get it. No, Joe Biden really thought until the bitter end that he was, the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that only he could be the Messiah that could beat Donald Trump. So that was 98% of it. Jumpin' Cenk Flash says this was not Biden's hour of need. It was our hour of need. He either didn't understand or didn't care that this was about the ability for the Democratic Party to win, not about his feelings. Couldn't agree more, 100%. Hypocritus Noah writes in, what a maniac. I love Cenk. He's really going to play a bunch of videos of himself saying, I told you so. Get him, Cenk. I support you. I believed you. I appreciate you guys. Look, we have fun with it. But again, there is a point. Know who to trust and know who not to trust. Unfortunately, that ship has sailed a little bit in terms of Kamala Harris, which I'm going to explain in a second. Words in the absurd wrote in, Cenk in Turkish means, I told you so. It doesn't, but it does mean war, which pretty much gets you to another thing I'm known for. All right, we'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur here. First, new members, Stephen Meyer wrote and been watching from Canada for about 8 years now. First time joining, just wish there was a Canadian equivalent. Well, look, we get enough members. I'd love to do it in Spanish, Arabic, French, Russian, Portuguese, any language that we can, even Canadian, just kidding. But still, we'd love to do a version for Canada, but we need a lot more resources to make that happen. I'm not stopping you from hitting the join button, and in your case, Steve, you already did it, and I appreciate you. Josh and Deborah, King Tai also joined. We appreciate you guys. Anna's Tommy Gun gifted 5 memberships. Trisha Briggs gifted 1. Swedane Dragon gifted 10. You're amazing. And to all the wonderful people who are anonymous, who donated on tyt.com/team, including the big one there that I see. You guys are awesome. We love you. And you make this show possible. So thank you to all of you guys. Now, let's go to the next story.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already, yes, you may clap.
All right, Kamala Harris seeming to take over the mantle of leadership. Did she deserve it? Is she already the leader of the Democratic Party? Well, I've got a ton of facts for you guys. And at the end, you're gonna see that the jury might have come in already. So that was her doing a tip of the hat to President Joe Biden, who endorsed her. That makes sense, it's a good thing to do. But you did get a little bit of a Jeb Bush, please clap moment there, but not too bad, not too bad. You got the famous Kamala Harris giggle/laugh. But not too bad, not too bad. And she has done a lot better in the last 3 weeks in terms of the speeches she's giving, the interviews she's giving, etc. So now, let's show you who has backed Kamala Harris and who is left standing for not backing her. So Joe Biden didn't say it in his first announcement, but within a half an hour, did endorse her after he dropped out of the race. Right afterwards, Hillary and Bill Clinton joined. Now these are giant players here you're gonna see, but there's a couple of people notably missing. One of them was Representative Nancy Pelosi, but right before showtime, she also endorsed Kamala Harris after earlier holding out and not endorsing her. So interesting development right there. And then all of these progressives, for reasons that are still a mystery to me, are apparently love Kamala Harris. AOC, Cori Bush, Ro Khanna, Ilhan Omar, later Elizabeth Warren, some of those others not as progressive, but those are big, giant progressive names. And then establishment figures like Representative Adam Schiff, Adam Smith, who led the movement in Congress to oust Biden. He's a little bit more of a conservative Democrat, but he was on the right side of the Biden issue. And then the governors that might have been competitive with her, Governor Josh Shapiro, Andy Beshear, Wes Moore, Gretchen Whitmer, Roy Cooper, J.B. Pritzker. So almost all the big names now having endorsed Kamala Harris just within 24 hours. Now I gotta tell you, Kamala Harris did something really smart. She put out a list of 4 names of potential VP picks for her, and those were among her top potential competitors. So Andy Beshear, Roy Cooper, Mark Kelly, and these folks were people that were on the list that might challenge her. And Josh Shapiro, and once she put them on the potential VP list, they were like, think about it. If you're Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, she's got 4 people on that list. You don't know that the list is 100% right, but it probably is, or it's close enough. That means you got about 25% chance of being the vice president. That's not bad odds. Those are pretty good odds, right? Or you're gonna do a long shot to challenge Kamala Harris when you've got this avalanche of other people endorsing her. Well, that makes it easier. You go for the safer bet, endorse her and try to be the VP. And that knocks out 4 of her top competitors. Well played. Look, I wanted to test Kamala Harris to see if she could do strategy and she could be savvy as a candidate. That's partially a test and nicely done. So I'll give her credit for that. And I think a significant amount of credit. So I just want to see her being able to conduct this campaign in a winning way so she could defeat Donald Trump. So now here's the New York Times in terms of the people who publicly supported her. Let's show that graphic for you guys, and then I'm gonna get to who is not supporting her. So these are the folks that they say publicly supported representatives, senators, and governors. Those are Democrats, all obviously. There are people who did not specify and people who have not commented. As you can see, the overwhelming majority of Democrats in Congress and Democratic governors already backing Kamala Harris. But 3 still at this late hour have not joined the festivities. And they're very relevant names. Chuck Schumer, leader of the Democrats in the Senate, Hakeem Jeffries, leader of the Democrats in the House, and President Barack Obama. They have not endorsed Kamala Harris yet. Now, there's a theory that they're waiting so that they do in big endorsements back to back to back, capturing the news cycle over and over again. I don't think that's the case at all. For reasons I'm about to show you, including a quote from President Obama. I think the real answer was they're waiting to see, can she lock this thing up? Can she bring in most of the delegates and most of the endorsements on her side? And if she does, of course they're gonna join in. And if she can't, well, then they're gonna keep an open mind, which I think is the correct thing to do. So I think it was actually relatively well played by Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries, and Obama. You don't hear me saying that often. So here's what President Obama said in his statement after President Biden dropped out of the campaign. He said, I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges. I believe that Joe Biden's vision of a generous, prosperous, and united America that provides opportunity for everyone will be on full display at the Democratic convention in August. So he was clearly for an open convention. He said he wanted a process through which we pick the strongest candidate, and he mentioned the convention. So that was a very strong endorsement of an open convention. I'm not sure anybody at MSNBC quite picked it up. The mainstream media didn't emphasize it so much because they were all in a frenzy of it has to be Kamala Harris. We need a leader. We need a leader. We've been without a leader for several minutes. There was massive panic that set in. And that's because my theory is, honestly, I think mainstream media, mainly MSNBC, has trained Democratic voters and politicians to take orders. And they use the excuse of unity. They never tell you who you should unify behind, except they say implicitly in everything they say on air about, Bernie Sanders, progressive radicals. No, not those guys. Never unify around them. But unity when it comes to corporate Democrats, then all of a sudden we need your obedience. And unfortunately, it has become a part of the culture of the Democratic Party. And that part of the culture I cannot stand. For God's sake, you've listened to these Democratic leaders get it wrong so often. Hillary Clinton in 2016, Joe Biden in 2024, and you still want to do the anointing business, but a lot of Democrats did. And so, and by the way, to be fair to all these folks, it wasn't just the donors and Democratic leaders, etc. No, the grassroots. That's why I said it's not just Democratic politicians, also Democratic voters. And so they voted with their money, and they have every right to do that. And by the way, also fair that that's one of the things that Kamala Harris had to prove. Is there enough excitement from actual Democratic voters behind you? And she passed that test too. $81 million raised just in 24 hours, which is a giant number. 81 million in 24 hours. Now look, I think a ton of that was Democratic panic. We need a leader. No convention. Don't test the candidate. Don't test. I just need someone to tell me who the leader is and I'll follow them. But having said that, look, you guys, you put in $81 million and your grassroots, your voice matters. And if you supported Kamala Harris and you wanted Kamala Harris as the candidate and you donated money, well, good job on you because you made a difference. So credit where credit is due. I might have a certain opinion, but I also acknowledge in my analysis which way things are going. So Democratic voters wanted a leader. They thought the vice president made sense, and they showed it in that spectacular number. Now here's another spectacular number that also made a giant difference for the Democratic politicians. So Future Forward is a PAC that was raising money for Biden, now raising money for Kamala Harris, and they say they have $150 million in large donor commitments. And that's a monster number. And Kamala Harris is also taking over about $100 million left over from Joe Biden. So instantly her war chest goes up to nearly $500 million. And that'll push all the other Democrats out too. So I'll get to a summary on that in a second, but let me show you the last two pieces of facts. So here's the Washington Post summary of where things stand. And she needs to get to 1,976 delegates because there's about 4,000 delegates overall. And she's got to get past that midway mark. And in their last look at it, she had 1,208 already, okay? Well, Wall Street Journal has updated that. According to their count, everybody has a slightly different count. They say it's already over. So here's a quote from the Wall Street Journal. Harris has secured more than half of the delegates she will need to clinch the Democratic nomination. And by the way, they say that's according to a White House, to an Associated Press count of the delegates. So I was gonna make a call for an open convention here, as you've heard me doing now for months when I thought that Joe Biden would drop out. In fact, I wrote an op-ed that I had ready to go that we published in Newsweek this morning. So we were on it, and it appears we have already lost. So, look, we won on Joe Biden getting out of the race, and that was an enormous accomplishment. And by the way, again, thank you to the TYT members. When we started doing that, everybody said it was absolutely impossible. But you said go forward, try it anyway. We got caught trying, and it worked. And it worked. So don't let them ever tell you that hope isn't possible. But at the same time, you have to be practical and pragmatic. If the Associated Press and Wall Street Journal are correct that she has over half the delegates, well, she won. That's the whole point. Now look, I would have preferred that the process be a little bit longer, and I would have preferred that we go to the convention, and I think it would have made the convention the most exciting thing anybody's ever seen. And I think we could have gotten a couple of $1 billion of free media through that entire exercise. But if she's already locked up all the delegates she needed, in a sense, she already proved what she had to prove. I wanted someone to be able to get the most amount of delegates, and it looks like she has the most amount of delegates. So if that's confirmed by all the other news organizations, well, then this thing's already over, and Kamala Harris is your new nominee. She'll pick a vice president sometime between now and the convention, and we'll have a new ticket. And is that better than Joe Biden? Well, in the old words of Sarah Palin, yeah, betcha. Okay, why? Because Joe Biden had now, as everyone acknowledges, including his top advisors and even the propagandists at MSNBC, Yeah, he had a near zero chance of winning. We were right all along. Is Kamala Harris higher than zero? Way, way higher. So I don't know how the race is going to shape out yet. We don't have enough information. In fact, that's why I wanted to go all the way to the convention. And I wanted this to be a longer process so we could have more information about who could be the best candidate. But that jury's already come in terms of who the candidate's going to be, it appears. So now we're going to see how good Kamala Harris is on the campaign trail. I don't think we have, I don't have enough information right now to make a prediction. We're going to have to see how this thing plays out. If you forced me and said, how do you have it right now? With the very little information that we have, I know that Trump is very unpopular. And I know that Kamala Harris has issues with her polling, which we're going to get to a little bit later in the show. I'd put it at about 50-50. 50-50 is a lot better than zero. Okay, so we're back in the ball game. So it's a good day in America overall. And now, one more thing. We asked you guys what would be the dream ticket. And we put this on our social media accounts on Instagram, on YouTube community, etc. And we put all sorts of different combinations, not necessarily just involving Kamala Harris. And you guys were clear. You also wanted Kamala Harris. Every combination with Kamala Harris won. But the number one combination you guys chose, now this is not surprising giving our audience, but Kamala as president, Bernie Sanders as vice president, unity ticket. I thought Democrats wanted unity. Well, our audience certainly had unity on that one. A huge 61% saying that that's the best combo. Again, given our audience and how progressive we are, certainly economic populists like Bernie Sanders in 2016 and throughout, that's not overly surprising, and it's not a scientific poll. We're not like the right wing, or the establishment for that matter, pretending things are scientific when they're not. That's just a sense of where our audience stands. But I was a little bit surprised by it because you guys are, when I say you guys, I mean in general, the people following us in social media, not necessarily the people watching live or the membership. But overall, there was a big surge for Kamala Harris. So now that the Democrats have decided in lightning fashion, whether I like it or not, let's see how Kamala Harris does. This is going to be a hell of an exciting race. Okay, now, after I tell you that, we've got an ironic story about Joe Biden's doubts about Kamala Harris. Drums. Okay, so before Joe Biden dropped out of the race, Axios has a story saying that he delayed a little bit because he was unsure about Kamala Harris. Uh-oh, a little bit of drama. Now remember, in his initial statement saying that he was dropping out of the campaign, he did not endorse Kamala Harris. I don't know if he forgot. I don't know if that was on purpose to say a slight wink and a nod to I'm not sure. Or if he's just angry and he put out the statement. I don't see how it could be calculated because when Kamala Harris wasn't mentioned, people were like, whoa, he's not endorsing Kamala Harris, and that didn't sit well, obviously, with a lot of people. About a half an hour later, he did put out a second statement endorsing her, but maybe it's because he had doubts all along. So let's go to the Axios piece. They say President Biden hesitated to drop his reelection campaign in part because he and his senior advisors worried that Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't up to taking on Donald Trump, according to 3 Biden aides familiar with recent talks about his plans. Now, by the way, it's not like Joe Biden had the world's greatest judgment near the end there. So if he had doubts about Kamala Harris, doesn't mean he's right, but it is interesting. I mean, he has worked with her for 3.5 years, and apparently he harbored some of those doubts. So let's keep going. They say this next week will be critical for Harris to prove doubters wrong as she moves quickly to try to clear the field of potential challengers for the Democratic nomination. But as we just told you on the live show, in the last story, it looks like she might have already done that. So hey, there you go, she passed that test. They continue, Biden, Bill, and Hillary Clinton, and many Democratic lawmakers quickly endorsed Harris, but others, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and former President Barack Obama did not immediately do so. So I thought that was very telling. So it's not just Biden who had at least some concern or doubts, it was all those major leaders in the Democratic Party. But as we discussed earlier, Democrats en masse, in my opinion, both the voters and the politicians panicked. Was like, we need a leader, it's gotta be Kamala Harris. What I was trying to do is go, whoa, hold on a second. Let's figure out why these guys are worried about her, but we didn't. So it looks like she's probably going to be the nominee as things stand now. But they continue. Of the 47 Harris staffers, this is some of the reasons they're concerned. Of the 47 Harris staffers listed in 2021, only 5 still worked for her as of this spring, according to the disclosures. That's a little concerning. So now she has to disclose about half of her staff because of Senate rules, not the other half. But in this half, 42 out of 47 left. That's not a great sign, but hold on. There's twists and turns here because let's hear out why they did. So Axios says some former aides said Harris had high standards that some did not want to keep up with, but others felt that she frequently grilled them the way she grilled Trump officials, such as then Attorney General Jeff Sessions when she represented California in the US Senate. Former aides often referred to Harris as prosecuting the staff. That doesn't sound that bad at all. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh my God, she was once mean to an employee and asked for research. No, she's the Vice President of the United States of America. She should grill her staff and they should be perfectly prepared and they need to get her prepared. Now, when I've seen her in public until recently, she didn't look that prepared. So I think maybe she should have grilled her staff even more, but I don't mind that at all. If the people are putting that out to attack her, I think for me it has the opposite effect. I hope she is vigilant as a boss. Alex Thompson from Axios continues, White House aides sometimes felt Harris wasn't a team player and stayed away from any task with risk. At times, Harris aides suspected Biden's team didn't want to give Harris opportunities to shine to avoid her being seen as a viable alternative to Biden ahead of his reelection bid. Well, again, I don't want to break your heart, guys, but these politicians are oftentimes not such good people behind the scenes. So while Biden and Harris publicly say, oh, we love each other, and Biden belatedly says, oh, just the best decision I ever made was picking Kamala Harris as my VP, I endorse her. Said behind the scenes, he's like, I don't know about her, man. And oh, she might be trying to upstage me. Well, then don't give her anything good. Bruh. That's disastrous. Jesus Christ, the country's on the line here. Work together. Meanwhile, of all the things stated so far, the one that concerns me most about Kamala Harris is she's adverse to taking risks. But if you're gonna be a bold leader and you're gonna win a campaign, you gotta take some risks. So if you're just sitting there going, and you're scared of taking risks, that is not a good sign. Tough boss, not bad. Risk averse, not good. Okay, in April 2022, Harris was this is an amazing story, was the guest for a dinner at a DC news mogul, David Bradley's home, a salon-style event Bradley hosts with Washington journalists and newsmakers. Harris's anxiety about the dinner was such that her staff held a mock dinner beforehand with staffers playing participants, according to 2 people familiar with the event. That's a really bad sign. I've been to a ton of events, with politicians, people in media, significant folks, to dinners. Any of you do mock dinners to prepare? I know she's a vice president, totally different, I get it. You're gonna go over to Bob's house, you're not gonna do a mock dinner, I got it, right? But even in that dinner, they're like, well, should we give her a couple of glasses of wine to simulate the dinner better? And then they decided against it. I don't know, man, that's super weird. Like if you're a politician, you should be able to schmooze a room filled with powerful people. A rehearsal for a very normal power dinner in Washington, that does not give me a lot of comfort. Okay, so look, jury's out overall on how she's gonna do, some good signs, some bad signs. But that's why we should have tested her. But no one wanted to test her, no one wanted to vet her. They just wanted to jump right in without knowing enough. So now you see these things. I hope it doesn't come back to bite us. But her being super nervous, her having to practice normal mundane things, not great signs. But I hope she continues being tough internally and externally. And lately, the last couple of weeks, she's been giving good speeches and interviews. Way better than the word salad she was doing before. So jury is totally out. I have no idea how she's going to perform. All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna tell you about her numbers. How's she doing so far? How's her polling? Is she way better off than Joe Biden? Is she competitive with Donald Trump? And then Jordan's gonna come join me and beat me up a little bit for not being enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. So you have that to look forward to when we come back. Let's go to Twitch first. Designer Dragon M says, women want a woman to lead, period, Cenk. I'm included. Well, God bless. I hope that tons and tons of women feel that way, so they go out and vote for her excitedly so she could beat Donald Trump. And nothing wrong with that way of thinking. Look, I don't, to me it's a little bit more complicated, but if it's not to you, well, that's why we're all different. And nothing wrong with how you think about it. Layman Shaman writes in, Jake, I honestly think Kamala is a slam dunk against Trump for one reason. Regardless of what politicians say, we all know that Kamala as a woman wants to restore women's autonomy/rights. Trump won't restore them because he is why they are gone. Young people want women's rights restored. If this message keeps getting repeated at the forefront of her campaign, I think it's a slam dunk. I think you're being way too optimistic about a slam dunk. I think that there are many other issues that could affect things. But having said that, yes, that is a huge factor in favor of Kamala Harris, and she's going to be able to make that argument infinitely better than Joe Biden. So God bless on that. Post247 says, we got the keys from Grampy. A little bit true there as well. Now we go to YouTube members. Nick Hill says, I feel like life was just breathed back into America. I think that's a great way of putting it, Nick. I think that's right. Curve on A says, yeah, Cenk, we get it. You're the greatest. Well, I appreciate it. I'm kidding. Sweet Dane Dragon. By the way, guys, no joke. If the members had voted no, don't go into the primary, I wouldn't have. And so we asked the paying members for really important stuff, sometimes for fun stuff like, should we do an ass pack shirt? Okay, sometimes, hey, should I run in a Democratic primary for president? Anyways, and so you guys were all right as well, and that was overwhelming, 76-24. So thank you guys for caring, for being right, and for doing the right thing. Sweet Dane Dragon says, Biden will go down as one of the best presidents. He accomplished a lot and bowed down when needed. That is proof of greatness. Look, I think that that's a little too optimistic for my taste. I think he got 15% of his agenda done, but that is much more than Barack Obama got done, although Obamacare was huge. And so it'll be interesting to how historians view that. Obviously infinitely better than anything Republicans do. But the important part is, most people, historians, most people will not remember too much the 24 days after the debate where he dragged his heels. They'll mainly remember that he did the right thing and left the race in time for the Democrats to potentially beat Donald Trump. And for that, I think you're right, he deserves a lot of credit. HC says, but Cenk, have you considered the keys? I heard Biden can still win this thing. I'm sorry, but I gotta love that one. Jingle jangle, where's the keys, Professor Lichtman? I thought Biden was gonna win. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Jordan Yule joining us now. Okay, fun for everybody. Look at this. And look at all these new people joining us as well. Doing the show with us today is John Penderdragon, Eddie Corrales, James Otto, Robert Angel. I say that because whenever you become Young Turks members, you are part of the Young Turks and you're doing the show with us. So I appreciate it. Hit the join button like they did. Become an American hero. Cynthia333 gifted 5 memberships. So did Kyle Shin. And Box gifted 1 membership. You guys are amazing. We appreciate you guys. Okay. So now, let's go to our next story.
The same polls that produced this average since the debate in the Biden-Trump race, what do they show when Harris is substituted in? A difference, but it's a difference of a point. For Democrats, they view this move as something that's going to improve their chances in the general election. That is based more on hope than it is on the numbers right now.
Well, that doesn't look like much of a difference, but I think it is. I think that number is wrong for reasons I'll explain in a second. But the numbers are about to get a little bit worse. So if you haven't seen this, buckle up, brace for impact, because I know everybody rushed to make Kamala Harris the nominee, but we didn't look at any of the numbers. So other than, to be fair, by the way, you see me criticizing MSNBC all the time. Here's Steve Kornacki doing a good job on MSNBC presenting real numbers. Let's look.
This is the average when you ask that question. Do you have a favorable, unfavorable view? Biden, 36, 57, been seeing numbers like this for a long time with him. Obviously, these are very perilous numbers. What are they for Kamala Harris? Average from the same set of polls? A little bit better. 36 goes up to 38, 57 comes down to 52. But take a step back. Those are not strong numbers. She hasn't entered the race with strong numbers on that basic question. What's the comparison to Donald Trump here? Trump averaging 41 favorable, 55 unfavorable.
Oops, that's not that good. Okay, but I did the math for you guys. Joe Biden was down by 21 in terms of his favorability. Not against Trump, but against himself, basically. He's 21 points underwater. That's an epic disaster, and especially if you're an incumbent, you cannot recover from being in the 30s. Now, Kamala Harris is 14 points underwater. First of all, it's 7 points less than Joe Biden, so I'll take it. It's a little bit better. Could we have gotten a candidate that wasn't underwater at all? Probably. But we didn't, we panicked. We'll get to that debate in a second in discussion. But I don't want you to lose any kind of hope here, because here's the iceberg that people keep forgetting, especially because of the assassination attempt and the positive halo that Trump got around it. Did you see that disapproval number for Donald Trump? It's at 55%. And it's been at 55% for a long, long time. 55% of this country hates Donald Trump. So all the people on the right wing who are celebrating, oh, we already won, they thought that was Joe Biden. I know, I was there at the RNC, and I was like, okay, guys. I showed the members in a video all the Fire Joe Biden placards they had, and I was like, look at all the money they wasted on this. It ain't even gonna be Joe Biden. We were right about that. Then now, today, when they find out it's likely to be Kamala Harris, they're celebrating again. Oh yeah, it's gonna be easy to beat her. I don't think they have any idea in their own bubble how unpopular their candidate is. So I think this race is now wide open. So Jordan, we were going to do a poll here, and I'll still put it up because not every news organization has confirmed she has the most delegates. But Kamala Harris now or open convention, tyt.com/polls, okay? And we were doing a petition on this, but given that the AP is saying she's got enough delegates, maybe not the petition. So I don't know that poll is going to be relevant anymore, but I wish it was. So I didn't want to rush into Kamala Harris. I wanted an open convention. You liked Kamala Harris more. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why, oh my God, it's great that we got Kamala Harris right away.
It's not that I liked Kamala Harris. It's that given the circumstances that we're in, and we talked about this on Friday, which many people saw, the circumstances don't really allow for an easy transition to anyone other than Kamala Harris. And by no means is she perfect. By no means would she be my first choice. If we had an open primary, which is something that you and I we're in lockstep on. We should have had an open primary and we wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't even be having this conversation now. We would have potentially picked a stronger candidate, maybe than both of them. But they didn't allow that. I think that's the root of the problem. So it's not necessarily should we have had an open convention or should we anoint Kamala Harris. It's that the circumstances that we were in 72 hours ago only really allowed for someone like Kamala Harris. We talked about the money transfer. What's that?
I was gonna say why. I mean, everybody keeps saying that, but I don't know why they say that. So the money transfer, you were about to say, we had that discussion. It can go to a super PAC. So I think the panic over that was unjustified. Why else did we have to do it right away in this circumstance?
So I don't think we should discount the money thing. That's huge. And on top of another huge fundraising day, they've got a massive war chest on the heels of FEC reports showing that Biden had lost his cash advantage on Trump. So they were already showing signs of slipping on top of, you reported earlier, Future Forward, all of those donors that were holding donations now are back in. So it's a good development. The other thing is the delegates. You talked about it a little bit earlier. I talked to Dave Weigel last night on my podcast, and he explained how they would move and how it's not a guarantee that they would go behind a candidate or there would be even a clear coalescing behind a candidate, that Biden could release them, that he showed his support for Harris, makes it a quicker transition, also allows her to get access to that money sooner, and then she'll be able to spend it. She'll be able to build up a campaign. You already have that infrastructure in place. Because we're on such a short timeline in that AOC live streams, again, this is the only person I've seen explain all of these circumstances, all of the logistical hurdles. With ballots going out in early voting in some states at the end of September, we're on a very, very short timeline. We now can start moving in July, building a campaign, getting volunteers out there rather than waiting another month before we start campaigning. So it's just a matter of time. Unfortunately, they didn't allow for an open primary. Now we just kind of have to do this. It's not ideal, but when the options are Harris and Trump, Harris is going to be more receptive to people like us speaking up, people taking action, demonstrating, calling for policies, calling for change, calling for anything when Trump wouldn't do anything.
Yeah. Oh well, vis-a-vis Trump, yes. Okay. Overall, on the ballots, not buying it at all. So, for example, here I could prove the case. All right, good. We got Kamala Harris, so we're good on the ballots. Jordan, who should we write in as the vice presidential candidate on the ballot?
Who do I think should be the vice president?
No. Who should we write in? Because the ballots are ready to go, right? Oh, right. The ballots aren't ready. I'm being a jerk. Okay, the ballots.
But that's also not what I was arguing. I wasn't arguing that the ballots are printed now, that they would come out in September.
I know, but Jordan, so if they're going to come out in September, what difference does it make if we decide now or the day before? Because we're not going to decide who the VP is and hence who's on the ballot until right around the convention. So it would have made no difference.
Because they can start campaigning now. She's at the campaign headquarters today. Now they have an additional month of campaigning versus waiting until August after the DNC to get moving.
Okay, so I hear you. It's not a ballot thing, but you're saying the two things are she could raise more money now. She's already going to get the bucket of cash today, and she's going to be able to raise for that extra 5 weeks. That's real, I get it, and that's a lot of money, right? And she could start campaigning instead of having all these different Democrats in the race making different arguments, etc. Okay, so perfectly legitimate argument. I think we would have been far better served if we had had all those Democrats, and then everybody's paying attention. Oh my God, what's Bashir saying? What's Moore saying? What's Shapiro saying? And it would have been so much more exciting, so much more free media, so much more attention to the Democratic Party. But your side won the debate, it appears, Jordan, because AP says that she's already got enough delegates. But wait, why are you? But it is your side, right? You wanted Kamala right away.
It's not even really my side. It's just like, given the circumstances, that's the smartest strategic move. I think.
Yeah, I don't agree.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't agree at all. The smartest strategic move was have the delegates, have the different candidates go in and fight for the delegates and get 10,000 times more attention. You know what the money buys you? It buys you ads. Ads are paid media. They're far, 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 far less effective than free earned media. and we would have had 10 times that much if we had a real contest, but we didn't. I think it was a mistake. But Jordan, I just was gonna say, it didn't really matter what I thought, right? Because no one really challenged her. They all immediately endorse her, all those governors that I wanted to enter the race, right?
So I think the lesson that they took away from 2016 was a fractured base helps Trump. Chaos, chaos at the convention, even though there really wasn't a chance materially for Bernie to get the nomination at the convention, that there were disruptions, that there was vocal dissent, created a fractured sentiment that they think led to Trump. I don't think that's entirely the case. Maybe that was part of it. It fueled sentiments that led to some people staying home for sure. Of course, Hillary was a uniquely unpopular figure. I think many other people could have beaten Trump that cycle, but alas, I think that's one thing that they are trying to avoid. I think it's why they are trying to push for a virtual nomination, or at least were until yesterday. They are desperately trying to avoid a scenario like that might fuel apathy, lead to people sitting home, and then paving the way for another Trump victory. Nobody wants that. And I think they're trying to be mindful of those types of circumstances, creating that apathy, leading to people sitting home and giving Trump the win.
Yeah, there would have been no chaos. Democrats would be lucky to be within miles of chaos. All they have is obedience. So anyways, but whether I would have been right or not is now appears to be irrelevant. Because Kamala Harris has won enough delegates. But by the way, to be fair to Kamala Harris, you could argue that she won those delegates. She just won them in 24 hours. And so well played. And I gave her credit for doing that gambit about who her potential VPs could be. That was smart and strategic. And now let's turn real quick, Jordan, to how she's gonna run the campaign. Because this is an ad now, not recently, but from 2020, but a really good ad of Kamala Harris against Donald Trump. Let's watch that first.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool. She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the...
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really only one. Kamala.
So on this one, we agree. I suspect, because I thought that was an awesome ad. So if she runs that kind of campaign, we're in business. So I don't know if it's the same Kamala Harris as 4 years ago. I don't know if she has the same team that created that ad, et cetera. But that was a pretty compelling message, Jordan. So when you look at that, what do you think? Are you hopeful that we move back to favorites? I mean, especially considering her poll numbers are pretty bad. Keep the whole context in mind.
Yeah, of course. Her poll numbers, like you said at the top, aren't great right now. That can definitely change once she has the benefit of being at the top of the ticket after the DNC having this moment. You already see the energy. You rattled off some of it, but you've got people showing up, according to campaign officials, showing up at field offices in Pennsylvania and Nevada, asking how they can volunteer yesterday. That's unthinkable. 28,000 people volunteered in one day. That is over 100 times the amount of people who volunteered for Biden in a single day. So the energy is there. And on the messaging, they're already doing it. We've got good news for you, Cenk, because she just went to campaign headquarters. They had a press pool with her, and she basically articulated all of those points over again in her speech to staff that was televised. And she said, like, Donald Trump is a criminal. I'm a former prosecutor. She's highlighting these contrasts between him and her that are just perfect for the median voter to see and clearly recognize that Trump is unfit for office. So they already are leaning into that messaging.
Yeah, in fact, I just got breaking news that she just said in an event, I specialize in cases involving sexual abuse. Donald Trump was found liable by a jury for committing sexual abuse. So she's going to prosecute that case. Look, we end on agreement here because I'm excited by that. I don't know that that's the best thing to focus on, but at least she's hitting hard right out of the gate, and it's a great contrast. Look, part of the reason we wanted Joe Biden out was to get this kind of energy, and Jordan's right. Now we have this energy, 81 million raised in 24 hours, and that's from the grassroots. All those volunteers showing up, Jordan's right about that. That's huge, wonderful energy. So can she make up those poll numbers? One, don't be overconfident about it, because that's not easy to get out from approval rating in the 30s. So on the other hand, don't worry too much about it yet either, because Kamala Harris hasn't been in a race with Donald Trump. She's just been the vice president. So all people have seen is attack jobs by right wingers who every once in a while will take pot shots at her. So I don't think those numbers are that reliable. We got to get the race going first, and then you'll get reliable numbers. So Jordan, we leave this with me going, all right, well, let's see what we got. 10,000 times better than Biden, and I got it at kind of 50-50 for now, with a lot left to determine, and you got it at pretty damn excited. Am I hearing you right?
Not about her, but just the energy we're seeing, like you laid out in these numbers. It feels a lot like 2008. The people who were engaged, the people who a couple weeks ago were totally checked out, many of whom would not even vote. This is a new moment, an opportunity for her to pivot, chart a different course. Francesca and I talked about this a lot on TDR today. She can really distance herself from the worst aspects of the Biden presidency to continue to harness that enthusiasm, bring in new people, bring in people who are going to stay home. And you see these volunteers, you see a lot of young people excited. I'm not necessarily excited about her, the candidate, or her, the president. I'm excited about beating Trump, and I think we can do it.
All right, we'll leave it right there. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna switch roles. Jordan's gonna present some stories for us, including what's Kamala Harris's position on Israel, on foreign policy, because Benjamin Netanyahu's coming to town. In fact, he's already in Washington, and that is going to be a huge issue for Kamala Harris. Come right back. Now I'm going to do something very different here and read some one-star reviews of the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Donnie Franchise said, pretty much it's like listening to a trash compactor. Someone else said, negative, anti-American propaganda. And others said, out of context, misquotes, typical leftists who are afraid to debate, just smear. These two would be perfect for CNN or MSLSD. Well, Donnie, you might have a point, because I feel like a trash compactor right now after taking in all those garbage reviews. But thanks for listening anyway. We are, in fact, unapologetically progressive. And if you're not ready for bold commentary, then we're not the show for you. On the Young Turks, we speak up about the issues that matter, and we want to make positive change happen. And now here's why we actually do the show. Mariel Morales said, found this podcast from the true crime podcast, Fruit Loops, and other great progressive podcasts. I've become an instant fan of the Young Turks. Great conversation, great takes, very well composed, factual podcast, very informative. Love to hear that. Z55 said, it's a joy to experience such awareness and intelligence from fascinating people. And Anna is gorgeous and brilliant. Apparently I'm just fascinating, but I'll take it. Paul for Progress said, news well delivered. Appreciate it. KOOK said, Democrats and Republicans are fair game for TYT. And if Anna or Cenk provide disinformation about anything, they will admit they made a mistake and correct it. We appreciate you noticing that we are honest. To people who actually listen to the substance of the show, thank you. Your listenership supports what we do. Leave a 5-star rating for the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Let's take the ratings back from the trolls. Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together. We've been here for over 22 years, and TYT remains a trusted source of truth and unfiltered progressive commentary. But we didn't achieve this alone. Our audience is an essential part of our collective story. That's just as true today as it was decades ago. But for us to carry on into the next generation, we require additional support from viewers like you. We're still here and will always be here as long as our viewers support us at tyt.com/team. Thank you. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Jordan Newell with you guys. Make sure you're checking out Jordan on Rebel Headquarters and the Insurgents podcast. New member Augusta Codillo, awesome name, and John Fox gifted a membership, and Benjamin Gilbert Liff gifted 50 because he is, as usual, an American hero. All right, Jordan, what do you got next?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to address Congress this week, and there will be one notable absence. Vice President Kamala Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee, declined to attend on July 15th and now will be out of town for a campaign event. As vice president, Harris has a seat reserved right behind the lectern Netanyahu will be using, but already last week, Biden's campaign scheduled her to speak at an event in Indianapolis. That probably wasn't an accident, a former senior administration official said, speculating that Biden's Sunday announcement isn't likely to bring her back to Washington on Wednesday, as the White House will even more so want to avoid clips of her applauding or remaining seated during certain lines of Netanyahu's speech. With Harris poised to replace Joe Biden on the top of the 2024 ticket, her absence has many wondering if there will be a shift in foreign policy should she beat Trump. Tariq Abash, who was a Biden policy advisor in the education department, said he's cautiously optimistic that Harris would be more willing to consider policy changes that center Palestinian human rights and curb Israel's continued actions in Gaza and elsewhere. Harris called for a ceasefire in Gaza before Biden did, he said, and she comes from a younger generation than the president. She has said on multiple occasions that she supports a two-state solution. Frankly, it's hard to imagine any Democrat have a worse approach to the genocide than Biden, given his complete resistance to any shift over the last 10 months. Additionally, as senator, Harris supported a two-state solution and reportedly privately pushed Biden to be stronger on Netanyahu over the civilian death toll in Gaza. One of the co-founders of the Vote Uncommitted campaign said voters may be more receptive to Harris than they were with Biden. While by no means a champion of the cause, I've heard numerous people note that Vice President Harris exhibited a deeply different emotional reaction to the stories of Palestinian suffering than President Biden. While the vice president is limited, many feel that she would be an improvement from Biden's severe lack of empathy for Palestinians and his ties to the AIPAC old guard in the party. However, challenging AIPAC's power within the Democratic Party establishment remains a formidable task regardless of who the nominee is. Others are understandably less optimistic there will be a shift in foreign policy under a Harris administration. Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter and foreign policy critic Chris Hedges posted on X, "The Democratic Party refuses to accept its responsibility for the capture of democratic institutions by a rapacious oligarchy, the grotesque social inequality, the cruelty of predatory corporations, and an unchecked militarism. The Democrats will anoint another amoral politician, probably Harris, to use as a mask for outsized corporate greed, the folly of endless war, the facilitation of genocide, and the assault on our most basic civil liberties." Cenk, is there anything worth reading into around her avoiding this Netanyahu speech? And do you think there will be a meaningful shift in foreign policy under a potential President Harris?
Hard to tell. So first of all, Democrats don't vary from each other much at all. And it's usually just the administrative state that really takes care of policy. In fact, Kamala Harris was going to give a speech in March that was more sympathetic to Palestinians, and the National Security Council made her revise the speech. So who's really in charge? And if I was the vice president, that's not how it would have played out, but she did revise the speech. Now, having said that, she has been more open to Palestinian rights and stopping the slaughter in Gaza than Biden has. So it's marginally better. Will she, I mean, look, everyone acknowledges and that the differences will be small. So do I appreciate that she's not going to meet with Netanyahu? Good, great, wonderful, if that's really true. Maybe she doesn't attend his speech, but again, let's see what happens. I'd be pretty surprised if she didn't meet with Netanyahu, because that would mean she was politically savvy, because that's a good way to get younger voters back, Arab and Muslim voters back. So if she sticks with that, terrific, but there'll be tremendous pressure to do exactly what Israel asks, commands, depending on how you want to frame it. And as president, will she cut off funding to Israel if they continue war crimes? About a 0% chance. So I guess I'll take slightly better rhetoric, but I don't want to get anybody getting their hopes up and thinking that, oh yeah, now we're gonna have a new policy and she's gonna be able to get a two-state solution. She's gonna change the minds of the Israeli officials and she's gonna be tough on them. I don't think any of that's gonna happen, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not super optimistic. I think it will just be nicer rhetoric, which to me doesn't matter. When people are still being killed, when people are still dying, you still have a high civilian death toll. Nicer rhetoric doesn't change anything. We've seen the president's press secretary and national security advisors try nice rhetoric. It doesn't change anything on the ground, it doesn't change their circumstances. So that's one front I don't think we can expect much on. But also, I don't think she would change course on Ukraine funding or heightening tensions with China. I don't expect anything different. And that isn't all her fault, or hypothetically all her fault. That's just because we have such a powerful military industrial complex that you're just kind of thrown in there. I always fear what a Bernie Sanders presidency would have looked like, especially on that front, because I don't think one person can change that entire machine. As much as I liked Bernie and wanted him to be the candidate and the president, I don't know what it would have looked like. Maybe some substantive changes, but that is such a powerful force in Washington, and you have to wrangle Congress for budget bills and appropriations bills. I just don't know if he would have been able to beat all of that lobbying power, all of those members of Congress who are loyal to the military industrial complex. So it's not entirely her fault that nothing will probably change. It is a systemic problem, and she just might be the latest victim to it.
Okay, let me give you the last couple of points here on both sides. So her top foreign policy advisor is Philip Gordon, and he's pretty good. He's been adamantly against regime change, including through sanctions. That's good. And he thought it was a terrible mistake to get out of the Iran peace deal and thinks we should get back in. That's really good. So her top foreign policy advisor, as good as you could hope for within the Democratic Party. Great. On the other hand, Aaron David Miller is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and this is how he explains Kamala Harris's Israel policy, and this rings true to me. He said, when it comes to Israel, she has very moderate views. To the left of what Biden is prepared to do, but way to the right of those who argue we need to impose costs and consequences on Israel to make it clear we're the superpower and they're not. So bottom line is, a little to the left of Biden on Israel, but she's gonna impose no consequences and no cost to Israel, which means, again, if this person is correct, and he probably is, no change at all. Because rhetoric can go take a long goddamn walk. I'm not interested in it. I agree with Jordan on that. I'm interested in, are you gonna make a difference? And the only way you can make a difference is if you withhold the money. But that would take extraordinary courage because you would have let's be honest, you would have a donor revolt, you would have AIPAC spending tens of millions of dollars against you, etc. And Democratic leaders have, I mean, I don't know that they've ever showed that kind of courage in my lifetime. So you're not gonna get much change there. But in terms of foreign policy, she's marginally in a better direction. In terms of Israel, you'd be crazy to think that we're gonna change anything. Last strand of hope is that the second dude, her husband, Doug Emhoff, is Jewish American and they celebrate all the holidays, etc. And why is that hopeful? Because my sense of American politics, and you could agree, disagree, etc., but non-Jewish Americans are a little bit more hesitant in criticizing Israel because AIPAC and every other person on the pro-right-wing Israel side is gonna scream anti-Semite at the top of their lungs, and it scares the living crap out of them, right? But Bernie Sanders, Jamie Raskin, perhaps Doug Emhoff, we don't really know, and hence Kamala Harris, have a little bit more leeway to say, hey, as a friend, ally, let's get Israel to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing. Will that really make a difference? There's no way of knowing. And do we know Emhoff's actual opinions on Israel, right wing, left wing on that issue? Not really. So a strand of hope, but not much.
Well, one thing though, so you might remember in 2019 during the primary, there was a big push to prevent Democratic candidates from attending the AIPAC conference. And many of them took pledges and committed saying they wouldn't go. Harris took that pledge. It was encouraging. And then it turned out that all she did was just invite top AIPAC folks to her office on the Hill instead of going to the conference. So it was just like one of those moments, like the quintessential politician, both sides moments where, yeah, you're not going to the convention itself, but you're just bringing them to your office. It just felt kind of seedy. So I just don't know. And she's taken a lot of AIPAC money. I don't expect a lot of difference from her on this.
Yeah. I mean, the chances of the US changing Israeli policy or changing our policy towards Israel has always been close to zero. So it just remains there. Yeah. All right, we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got more stories for you guys, including now the absurd, ridiculous attacks have begun from the right wing against Kamala Harris. And I think they're making a huge mistake. We'll talk about it when we come back. All right, so let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Kevin Pilate says, I appreciate the case you're making for the Harris campaign, but I don't think I can vote for her or any Democrat at the federal level. Gaza has totally destabilized my view of the whole party. But brother, so look, you make any decision you like, and we still got 4 months to go. But that really shouldn't be news to you. I mean, AIPAC, along with many other lobbies like the big pharma, big oil, etc., totally, utterly control American politics. So that's not I mean, the Democrats, read my book, Justice is Coming. They sold out back in 1978, not on Israel, but on all of the donors and all of the lobbyists, and that it's not the party of FDR anymore. We're just making sure that worse forces don't come into play like Donald Trump and his lack of belief in democracy, etc. One Iron leader says, keep reporting and keeping it real, thank you. And Dreamwalker says, yesterday I was for an open convention, but now I'm Team Harris. Kamala can win and is the best we'll get, and we need to minimize Republican ballot litigation. Look, they're gonna do their ballot litigation no matter what, but it doesn't matter because, again, AP is reporting she has enough delegates. Dank Pro says, I'm with Jordan on this one. She's already consolidated support and the clock is ticking. Jesse says, we the people weren't even given 24 hours to voice our opinions. And so, look, both sides on this issue, and for those of us who were for an open convention, if the AP is right and it's already over, it's okay. That's politics and that's life. You win some, you lose some. Now we move on and make the best of what we got, and let's start to lobby for a great VP pick. I think some of the ones she mentioned are pretty good, but I think Jamie Raskin should be considered. So we'll come back to that as we go forward. Brickhouse Mama 98 says, I'd been unsubscribing from all the Dem fundraising texts and sites. I said I would donate again once Biden dropped out. That's why I donated today. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Give the politicians incentives and disincentives and get them to do what you want. Vote Naturalized Citizen Crusader says, Happy Joe stepped down from running for re-election, especially his foreign policy on Gaza has been horrendous and miserable as he claims himself to be Zionist. Do you think Kamala will be more progressive-minded or just any other typical corporate Democrat in foreign policy? Well, we just had the segment on that, and I hope that you got what you were looking for out of that. But whether it was Kamala Harris or even someone else that I thought might be better at beating Donald Trump, their policy towards Israel was going to be 99% similar, no matter what. And I wish it weren't the case, but it is. 2B says, is it time for a real independent? Have the parties failed us? Is there a return for the Democrats and Republicans? Much love from New Jersey. Well, at this point, give Kamala Harris a chance. She just got in the race. Let's see how she does. Let's see what she says. And so I would say this very much quiets the talk of an independent or a third party run for the moment being. Dr. Aldensey writes in, or Draldency, huge excitement for the race again. Congrats, Cenk. Congrats to all you guys. Now we have a chance of beating Donald Trump, so I feel terrific about that. Jeff Raywell Stewart says something nice. Reason 147 why I love Cenk. Right back at you, brother. You crazy? Appreciate it. And I'm out of time. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. Also Ivy and Les Paul fan, you guys are awesome. We appreciate you. I'll read these two super chats because they're fun. Box says, so what about those 13 keys? That's what I've been asking all day. Okay. Trisha Briggs says, hashtag Cenk was right. I'm not saying anything. The good folks at home are saying things. It's in the streets. And to all the wonderful people who donated through tyt.com/team, most of you are anonymous, including the huge donor. We appreciate you guys so much. Whether you gave a lot or a little bit, it's what you could do, and we couldn't appreciate it more. But I will read the two names that are in here: Jetta Ninja and Skywalker JLP. Thank you for becoming members through tyt.com/team. We love you for it. Jordan.
Take a look at this.
If we can go into our time machine and go back to 2020, well, every time that someone tried to interject the truth about Kamala, which is that she slept her way to the top, it's a fact. She was with some 6-year-old man, got her start in the political career, and they would go, oh my gosh, how dare you say this? That's so sexist. Well, then suddenly on July 6th, the Daily Mail actually published a headline about the fact that Kamala Harris was, thoughting through life.
Over the past 24 hours, right-wingers have shifted their rhetoric to immediately attack presumptive Democratic nominee Kamala Harris with racist and sexist rhetoric. Unfortunately, there's more video where that came from. Let's watch some of those clips from Fox News and Newsmax. Take a look.
And the big challenge, the deliciousness of it all, is this woman who is literally a DEI hire, a woman who laughs about little yellow school buses and Venn diagrams, who cackles like an insane woman. How are you going to jump? How are you going to skip over her because she's female and her skin color is the correct DEI color?
Joe Biden chose her not because she was some wonderful politician. Joe Biden did not choose her based on merit. He chose her based on the same criteria of DEI that got Trump shot.
Well, assuming, Jesse, that it ends up being Kamala Harris as the nominee, and I know a lot of big Democrats are endorsing her, but the one voice that's been silent on Kamala is Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle Obama. They've been very quiet. So I think maybe Michelle Obama still may be in the mix. That being said, if in fact they go ahead
wait a
with
second.
Kamala
Is
Harris,
Michelle Obama's in the mix? Is she in the mix in Chicago, in her hometown?
They can position her as the reluctant candidate. She's a woman of color, so that squares the Kamala Harris circle, being a minority and a DEI hire.
Meanwhile, the Trump campaign put out an ad that largely avoids that rhetoric, but does hit Harris on her laugh. Take a look.
If you ever wondered how Joe Biden could get the border so screwed up, remember, he had help. Here's Biden appointing Kamala Harris to be his border czar to deal with illegal immigration. And here are a record number of illegal immigrants, 10 million and counting, flooding over the border after Harris was put in charge of stopping illegal immigration. To be fair, Harris got off to a rough start by ignoring the border.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Cenk, on the DEI comments, the racist, sexist comments, what do you make of those? And do you think that's going to backfire for Republicans as the campaign continues?
Yeah, so look, there's some legitimate issues that they can hit Kamala Harris on, including immigration. She was supposed to be in charge of that, created issues. And then there's stylistic things like the laugh. You might think that it's terrible to make fun of her for that, etc. But that is going to affect some voters. Her word salads like, I have been to the border, I have been to the border, was kind of a disaster. That's why I was a little bit worried about her. She's gotten much better recently on that. But Jordan, to the heart of your question about the illegitimate attacks, right? So Candace Owens claiming she slept her way to the top. I mean, it's just it's a terrible thing to say, right? And Charlie Kirk there saying is a DEI pick and the kind of DEI that got Trump shot. What? What are you talking about? So first off, if you said, look, partly they picked her to appeal to female voters and black voters because Joe Biden's an old white male and they were thinking of demographics, okay, that'd be fair. But then you would have to admit that Barack Obama picked Joe Biden as his VP because he was an old white male. So was that DEI? I never saw anybody criticizing that. I never saw anybody talking about race or gender about that. Now all of a sudden when it's Kamala Harris, they go and do this. But Jordan, on those illegitimate attacks, I'm not only am I not too concerned about it, I don't want to say I'm excited about it because that's not the right thing to say, but I think that they're going to backfire. And so that's why I think it's not such a bad thing that these knuckleheads are out there saying these outrageous things, because when people see that, I think a lot of women, when they see Candace Owens saying the ugly thing about how she slept her way to the top or whatever, yeah, your aggro male audience might like that, but they were gonna vote for Trump anyway. And I think that's gonna turn a lot of women voters off and is gonna be super counterproductive for Republicans and Trump. So have at it, Hoss.
No, I think that's exactly right. It is playing to a base that is already going to show up for you when this race is going to be won in the margins and in the middle. And their behavior, this rhetoric, it is so off-putting to just the average American. You have to be super online, super read in, and super conservative for this stuff to land well. Otherwise, you're going to hear that and be like, what is that? What are you talking about? Like the DEI stuff is just a right-wing cult talking point. To anybody else, we've talked about this before. We talked about this last week. That's just standard at every company. The right wing politically is trying to make it into an issue, but the average person, the average moderate is not going to care about that because they associate that with fairness and equity, which is something that most people understand as a good thing. For reasonably, it's a reasonable point. Just like you have an accounting department, to pull from your example last week, you also want to have some element within HR to make sure everyone is treated fairly. That's great. So I think that's going to backfire. And that's not even the worst stuff that I've seen in the past 24 hours. They're going after her for not having her own kids, her having stepkids. That's going to be weird and alienating to people. All of these different types of behaviors, when the average voter sees them, is going to be off-put by them because it shows what a weird cult of personality has built around Trump and the overly specific, hyper-personal issues that they're glomming onto and trying to weaponize.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to backfire. Look, Trump was up to 21% of black voters. A part of that was because they were comparing him to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden, he didn't do voting rights. He didn't do a lot of things that he said he was going to do. The inflation was causing economic problems, et cetera. That was part of it. But now, I don't think they're all coming back just because Kamala Harris is black, right? But when the right wing makes the mistake of attacking her because she's black and saying, oh, it must have been a DEI hire. When Joe Biden was picked as VP by Obama, that wasn't about race. But when it's Kamala Harris, it is about race. And we assume that she must be incompetent because look at her, she's black, she's a woman, et cetera. And even if they don't say it's because she's black, although they pretty much do, they certainly heavily imply it at every turn. Slowly, that's going to begin to turn off a lot of black voters and have them go back to the Democratic Party because they're like, yeah, brother, it's one thing to say you're against portions of DEI. And I think even some minorities are, depending on your interpretation, depending on which clause you're talking about. We can have a reasonable conversation about DEI, but this is not a reasonable conversation. The way they're framing it makes it seem like black people, women, et cetera, the only reason they're ever hired is because of DEI. Otherwise, obviously they're inferior to white males and only white males should be hired. Well, you keep saying that, brother, and you're gonna lose the election because minorities and women are gonna get awfully tired of that and they're right.
Yeah, and they're fired up, understandably so. They now have an option that isn't just an old white guy, more relatable. And for black women, this is a huge moment. This is great. Last night, you might have heard about it, but the Win with Black Women organizing call had 44,000 people attend a virtual call last night, which is just crazy for a volunteer call on a Sunday night. They raised 1.6 million, and those are 44,000 black women who are going to go out and mobilize, get people out to vote. They're going to organize and volunteer the rest of the cycle and probably inspire many other people to take action. So the more the right puts out this off-putting language, the more it inspires people who are directly affected by that rhetoric to take action.
Yep. All right. I think we're gonna take a break here, guys. And when we come back, we've got more news for you all, including more clownishness from the right wing. How about Donald Trump himself? Let's see what this guy's up to. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. Montana, Margarita Saul said, wouldn't it be nice if a candidate would take the PAC money, but do what the populace wants anyway? I think people would support such a person. Pipe dream? Pretty much, because you would know ahead of time if a person had the capability of doing that. So you would know because they would take risks, they would be strong, they would do some things that were against conventional wisdom. That doesn't appear to be Kamala Harris or any of the Democrats I've seen in my lifetime. So they usually do exactly as you would expect. They're meek. The idea that they would challenge donors is pretty much unthinkable. But your strategy is not wrong. If we just had one strong, decent, moral leader, they could totally do that. There's no reason why Barack Obama in his second term shouldn't have said, that's it, I'm gonna fight like hell for it to get money out of politics. He's never gonna run again, by definition. So he could have gone on a war path and made a giant difference, but he chose not to. And most Democrats will choose not to because they were hired in the first place to be meek and to serve donors. I'm keeping it real with you guys. Look, it's a good day. I want you to be excited, but I also have to be honest with you guys, and that is the obviously what has happened in American politics generally, and a huge part of what my book is about. Justice is coming. All right, so Tuffy says, Cenk, I 100% agree. An open convention with all the candidates speaking would have been both incredibly exciting and invigorating, and I think it would have restored vigor in the Democratic Party and especially youth. I agree with that, we just didn't get it. Revenge Dragon writes in, huge retro TYT vibes with Cenk and the floating graphic. Okay, yeah, I love that. This is interesting. Pee Wee Shuttlepants wrote, and I'm split on Kamala. Does she even really want to be president? I think that she wants to be president. Whether she wants to lead is a different question. And that's why I'm worried about how, nervous and reluctant she was as vice president. This story I covered in the first hour. Being president and being a politician is different from being a leader. So I haven't seen a lot of that in her yet. But again, guys, I mean, look, Biden's out. We're in the race. I'll take it. Bongwater Kendra says, I feel incredibly conflicted about the thought of not voting this election. I acknowledge the need to defeat Trump, but I don't know if I can bring myself to vote for Kamala Harris. I am open. Let's see what she brings to the table. Well, I love that last sentence. Guys, just be open-minded in both directions. Let's see what Kamala Harris has to say. Let's be fair, open-minded, open-hearted. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys, and also Paige Kephart, Ali Leha, and Daniel Thomas. They just became American heroes by hitting the join button below. We appreciate it, and you can do likewise. And if you want to contribute, as some wonderful folks have, you allow us to get our honest voice out there. You can do that through tyt.com/team. And whenever I mention a link, it'll always be in the description box. Watch. ShopTYT.com, boom, link's gonna be in there, okay? And Shop's got a couple of shirts like Run DNC. We had a Malarkey shirt, which you should check out. That didn't make it, but also vote based on the Supreme Court. Okay, one quick thing before Jordan gets to the next story. That's why I was looking down at my phone. The poll, what will Cenk be today? Smug, reserved, insufferable, or hilarious? Okay. Coming in at number 4 is reserved, correctly so, very unlikely. Coming in at number 3 at 28% is smug, very likely and a solid number. Insufferable comes in second at 29%. Combine those two and you've got a significant majority for smug and insufferable. And I don't blame you guys. But coming in number 1 at 35%, hilarious. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Okay, I might have checked off a couple of boxes with my with this reaction to it. Okay, anyways, all right, Jordan, what's next?
I wrote in E, all of the above, but my vote's not counted. So
no, not true. Never reserved. Okay, but yes.
Take a look at this.
Well, democracy is dead in the Democratic Party. The elitist coup led by Washington, D.C., Hollywood elitists, Democratic big money donors It worked.
This is as full frontal an attack on American democracy as we've ever seen in the history of America's major political parties.
I mean, this is confusing for democracy. Before we preach to anybody else about how democracy and a republic should go, we got to get ours straight. And the Democrats, all they wanted to talk about leading up from the Biden campaign was the threat from Trump for democracy. No, they're the threat. Look at today.
Fox News has gone into meltdown mode over Joe Biden dropping out of the 2024 race, saying that it is unfair and that democracy is dead. Republican nominee Donald Trump is especially mad, going on a wild Truth Social rant. We have that for you here. Who is running our country right now? It's not Crooked Joe. He has no idea where he is. If he can't run for office, he can't run our country. Going on, he says, Biden never had COVID. He is a threat to democracy. The Democrats pick a candidate, Crooked Joe Biden. He loses the debate badly, then panics and makes mistake after mistake, is told he can't win, and decide they will pick another candidate, probably Harris. They stole the race from Biden after he won it in the primaries. A first. These people are the real threat to democracy. And at one point, he also demanded that the Democratic Party reimburse the Republican Party for the money that the Republicans spent trying to get Joe Biden out. He wrote, "So we are forced to spend time and money on fighting Crooked Joe Biden. He polls badly after having a terrible debate and quits the race. Now we have to start all over again. Shouldn't the Republican Party be reimbursed for fraud in that everybody around Joe, including his doctors and the fake news media, knew he was not capable of running for or being president? Just asking." Trump's talking points were echoed by a majority of the Republican Party for perpetuating fraud on voters. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said in a statement yesterday, "At this unprecedented juncture in American history, we must be clear about what just happened. The Democratic Party forced the Democrat nominee off the ballot just over 100 days before the election, having invalidated the votes of more than 14 million Americans who selected Joe Biden to be the Democrat nominee for president. The self-proclaimed party of democracy has proven exactly the opposite." Trump insider Stephen Miller was especially on one during an appearance on Fox News. Take a look.
They held a primary. People, they had ballots. They filled out circles. They went to the voting booths. They spent money on advertisements. And as President Trump said, the Republican Party spent tens of millions of dollars running against Joe Biden. Now they just woke up one morning and said, never mind, we're canceling the entire primary. We're getting rid of our candidate and we're pretending the election has never even happened and we're gonna let donors handpick a new nominee. They're publicly admitting that they are an oligarchy. They are not running a democracy. They are not running a representative republic. This is an oligarchy controlled by business interests. And the Democratic Convention is the private corporation that represents those business interests. This is as full frontal an attack on American democracy as we've ever seen in the history of America's major political parties.
It's a coup. They filled in circles. But not to be outdone, former Representative Madison Cawthorn also added his 2 cents, saying, "Someone sue the Biden-Harris campaign for a refund and request a preliminary injunction. That campaign should not be allowed to spend $1 on Kamala's behalf until it is fully litigated." And there's more I want to get to in a second, but I do want to bring you in here first, Cenk, just on the fraud element. I mean, we know there's going to be some litigation. We talked about it on Friday. The Heritage Foundation telegraphed it even before the debate. But do you think there is any merit to any of these claims?
No, I think all of these claims are laughable, ridiculous. So let me knock them down one by one. Fraud. There was one candidate and then there was a different candidate. You mean like Lyndon Johnson was the candidate and then he was unpopular, so he dropped out, and the Democrats got a new candidate. Wow, what fraud. No, that's just called an election, brother. Number 2, that Jason Miller, you know, the Democrats, I can't believe it. It turns out they're controlled by business interests. Like the Republicans aren't? Are you kidding me? The Republicans are the party of business interests. In fact, Donald Trump was just begging oil executives just a couple of weeks ago, give me $1 billion and I'll give you everything you want. I'll let you drill everywhere. I'll take away all regulations. What happened to being controlled by business interests? This guy's begging to be controlled by business interests. He did the largest corporate tax cut in history. No one has pleasured more corporations than Donald J. Trump. So please spare me your outrage about business interests. And then they're like, the money. We spent money thinking we were running against Biden. And now they did a good strategy of switching out Biden and having someone more electable. So we should get our money back. That's absurd. Both parties spend a ton of money on candidates that never wind up being the official nominee. They'll do ads against certain nominees during primaries when you don't have an official nominee at all. That is very common practice. And you don't get to cry about it later. I thought that Bernie was going to be the nominee, but it turned out to be Hillary. I want my money back. That's not how it works. There's no crying in politics. And God, the Trump team, for all that they pretend to be alphas and strong, if you notice, all they ever do is cry, bitch, and complain. Wah, 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 wah. Okay, so now we go to democracy. Well, if you complain about the Democrats not holding a real primary, canceling the Florida election, taking people's name off the ballots, not having debates, you would have had a legitimate point. We're fair and honest, we point that out. And I know because I was in those primaries and they were a sham. But you didn't complain about that. Now you're coming around and saying, those are great primaries. I can't believe they're taking democracy away from those poor Democratic voters that voted for Joe Biden. Yeah, you have a real concern for the Democratic voters. And that's what you're heartbroken about? Please. You said that it was against democracy when Joe Biden wasn't dropping out. Now you're saying it's against democracy when Joe Biden is dropping out. Make up your mind. So why do they do this? They do it to neutralize a talking point against them. Donald Trump is the one that did the fake elector scheme, which was a coup against the country. And Donald Trump is the one who said we should suspend the Constitution. Donald Trump is the one that considered martial law. And his side, and it just happened in a debate I had on Piers Morgan this morning, where the right wingers said, we're not a democracy anyway, we're a republic. That's a talking point they often have. But I don't know if you guys remember this, but the original fake news was when Donald Trump's team kept putting out fake articles on Facebook during the 2016 campaign. But what Donald Trump did was he just grabbed that term and used it so much against the mainstream media that people forgot he's the original fake news. And so that's exactly what they're trying to do with all this talk of coup and anti-democratic principles, etc., in regards to the Democrats, when they have no leg to stand on at all. And if it really was some sort of coup against the Democratic voters and against democracy, well, then there would be a rebellion from all those Biden voters in the primary. But I told you all along, and I'm again shown right here, there are no Biden voters. Every Biden voter is going to vote for any Democratic candidate. They're not going to be like, you guys took Biden out? My feelings are so hurt. That's it, I'm not voting, or I'm voting for Trump. Find me one voter that says that. You won't be able to out of the 14 million that voted for Joe Biden in the primary. They're thrilled to vote for any Democrat, including Kamala Harris. So this is the Republicans pretending they care about Democratic voters that don't even exist, that are so upset that Joe Biden's been taken away. So total, utter nonsense through and through.
Yeah, they are upset because they built their entire campaign and narrative around Biden being weak, Biden being ineffective, and then they just have nothing now. They've got somebody who can finish a sentence and somebody who, like we talked about earlier, highlights the contrasts between them that make Trump look very, very bad. They knew Biden was just going to be a punching bag on the debate stage, which is why immediately after that debate, when he started doing public appearances again, he was calling for another debate immediately. Now you see him, well, I don't want to do the debate on ABC. Maybe we should have it on Fox, trying to make excuses to get out of the debate with Harris. So it is very funny to watch. It's totally disingenuous. But on the coup points, it's a really important factor. They are also making the case that this is a threat to democracy that this is proof of a coup. David Sachs, we've talked about him before. He spoke at the RNC, wrote just this morning, Biden's campaign chair said he wasn't leaving the race. Then Biden suddenly posts a resignation letter with no address to the country. Reeks of a coup. One candidate survived assassination, the other staged a coup. Your choice, America. Paul Gosar, the far-right extremist representative, wrote, the coup is complete. Trump and JD Vance also told Jesse Waters Biden dropping out is a coup before he even decided to drop out. And this note, we got to note, this interview was taped on Saturday following the RNC before the news broke that Biden was dropping out. Take a look.
You'd investigate the people that hid Joe Biden's condition?
Well, I think somebody has to look at it. Look, you had people that lied to the American public. And I tell you what, you ought to take a look at his doctors, because his doctors keep giving him this wonderful report. I'm not a doctor, but I saw him the other day, was unable to get up the children's stairs going into Air Force Ones.
Is it a coup against Joe Biden?
It's sort of, yeah.
I think it is. I mean, look, there's a constitutional process, the 25th Amendment. If Joe Biden can't run for president, he can't serve as president. And if they want to take him down because he's mentally incapable of serving, invoke the 25th Amendment. You don't get to sort of do this in the most politically beneficial way for Democrats. If it's an actual problem, they should take care of it the appropriate way.
And Vance kind of lays the ballgame out there. It is politically beneficial. That seems to be why they're so upset. But what do you make of the coup rhetoric in the 25th conversation, Cenk?
Look, I thought the Democrats should have been using the word coup for the last 4 years. When you do a fake election, so look, we just interviewed Rudy Giuliani at the RNC. And I asked him, why didn't you use Trump's actual electors? Because both sides have slates of electors when you went to go and tried to overturn the results of the election. And he said half of them wouldn't do it. Now, why wouldn't half of Trump's electors do the scheme? Because they thought it was illegal and unconstitutional and in essence a coup. So that's why they had to get the fake electors. So the Democrats are so bad at politics. I'm sorry if that breaks your heart, but it's definitely true. They're so bad at talking points and getting their message out. They should have been calling it a coup from day one. Now the Republicans are doing a thing that's strategically smart, although it lacks all substance. They're preemptively calling what happened to Biden a coup, so that when the Democrats, if they ever come back around to using that word more effectively, will seem like they're copying the Republicans. And then they'll get every Republican on social media going, oh, you guys did a coup against Joe Biden, so it's even. Now, is it an actual coup? No, of course not, that's absurd. So if they did what Vance is suggesting, the 25th Amendment, that's constitutional, it's literally in the Constitution, it's an amendment in the Constitution. But that's closer to a coup, because that's the vice president and your own cabinet removing you from office. When you agree to step down, that is not a coup. Nobody put a gun to his head, etc. In fact, he resisted it for a long time. He could have kept going. He could have said, I don't want the donor money, or I don't need it. I'm going to run it from the grassroots. And he was raising a decent amount from the grassroots. He could, and Bernie ran a campaign that way. He could have said, hey, listen, Democrats, you do anything you like. I'm in charge. He could have done all that. But instead, he agreed and he stepped down voluntarily. That has nothing to do with a coup. And Biden won the election. He's the president. He gets to make those decisions on whether he wants to run for a re-election. A lot of presidents have decided not to run for re-election. On the other hand, Donald Trump lost the 2020 election and said, wah, 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 I don't want to lose. But you did lose, bitch. And then people were like, oh, no, we have mules, we have Krakens. God damn it, let's just get a bunch of fake electors and do a coup. Who cares about democracy? So that's a coup. Not a guy saying, yeah, it looks like I'm gonna lose, so I'll step down. So they lie like this so regularly that every once in a while, when we're honest about the faults of the Democratic Party, people will be like, oh, are you going to the right wing? Are you gonna be MAGA? Are you gonna be pro-Trump? Who can support these whiners that constantly lie? This has nothing to do with a coup, it's absurd.
Yeah, it's totally that this is a political disadvantage for the right, for Trump's campaign. And maybe I'm being too aspirational and hopeful here, but I do think when we have a full post-mortem of this decision, it would be interesting to see when they actually made the decision. I can't imagine he just woke up on Sunday and it's like, that's it. And this 1 minute timeline seems kind of fishy to me. I'm wondering if they knew it was going to happen. It felt untenable over the past couple of weeks when you had this wave building of people calling for him to drop out in his own party, donors withholding money. It didn't seem like it was ever going to be a winnable argument for the Biden team. So I'm wondering if they deliberately held it until after the RNC to undercut that narrative, whatever came out of it. And this was maybe even before the assassination attempt. But if so, masterful job. Who knows? It could be, maybe not, but I would like to see when they actually made that decision.
No, I know. The reporting is clear. So if they had held it after the RNC, I'd give the Democrats enormous credit. I'd say well played, way to screw over the Republicans, good political strategy. But no, NBC, CNN, everyone else reporting, Biden made the decision this weekend. He was super angry about it, didn't want to go in that direction, but he was worried about his precious legacy and made the decision late and didn't really check with too many other people. But it was his decision. He did make it here. I wish he was as smart as the Republicans think he was, and that made this great, strike against the Republicans and had them waste their money at the RNC. But no, he was just hanging on for dear life. But at the end, made the right decision and let go of power, which Donald Trump refused to do, even after he lost. So that's all the difference in the world. Okay, now we got to take a break, guys. When we come back, we're going to talk to two people about the future of the Democratic Party. What do we do next? Representative Khanna is going to join us, and after that, Adam Green, the leader of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. We'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Let's have an interesting conversation now. Let's go to Representative Khanna. He joins us. Representative Khanna, you supported Kamala Harris right out of the gate after Joe Biden stepped down. And it looks like she, according to the Associated Press, has enough delegates now that she will be the nominee. But I thought it was a bit quick to go with Kamala Harris right out of the gate. I was hoping for a fuller conversation with different candidates. Why the rush to Kamala Harris?
Well, I think she gets to run on the progressive agenda that Biden has recently been adopting. The rent caps that we've pushed hard for, which he spoke about in Detroit, the sense of strengthening Social Security, the investments in infrastructure, in clean energy. And I thought that I've worked with her, and there are a lot of things on the domestic front that I agree with. And I think she also would energize the base. But I also said from the beginning that I respected there being an open process, and I would hope that other candidates, if they wanted to run, would run, and certainly don't think it should be a closed process. Excuse me.
Yeah, no problem. So Jimmy DeLine is one of our members, and he wrote in, he said, look, she's got a pretty progressive platform back in 2020, Medicare for all, higher minimum wage, money out of politics, etc. But that was a long time ago, Congressman. Do you think she'll stick with those policies, for example, Medicare for all, or is she gonna go in a new direction now that's a little bit less progressive?
Well, part of my memory, because I was Bernie Sanders' co-chair, is she wasn't clearly for Medicare for all. She had the worst of all worlds because the conservatives, moderates said, oh, she's for Medicare for all, but then she did all these plans. I don't even remember the details, where it was basically a version of Buttigieg's, some version of Medicare, but not the Medicare for all that Warren and Bernie ran on. So I hope she's for Medicare for all. I'm not sure she will be on that, candidly, but there are other areas on rent caps, on affordable housing, on a bold climate vision, where I do hope that she will take the progressive direction, and expect she will, because Biden himself was moving in a more progressive direction. It's one of the reasons that Bernie and I and AOC and others stuck with Biden as long as we did.
Yeah, well, but then I do have to ask about that. Now, given that Biden did drop out, do you regret was sticking with Biden for so long when it looked like he really didn't have a chance of winning?
Well, we thought that if he ran on a bold working class agenda that he could win. I mean, that was the conversation among a lot of people in the Congressional Progressive Caucus and Bernie Sanders. And you know what? He was adopting a lot of the things we were telling him to. He was running on the Supreme Court justices. He was going to come out for term limits. He was had adopted rent cap. I mean, rent control. Imagine how bold that is for Biden to have gotten there. He was running on strengthening, increasing Social Security, on a living wage. And our view of the election was that if we proposed a bold working class agenda, that he would be able to win. Now, I understand that there are people who thought otherwise, and obviously, in some sense, they turned out to be right, that he didn't think he could make the race, but that's where some of us were coming from.
Thank you. On those of us who thought he couldn't make it, but I hear what you're saying, and you guys were heading in that direction, which leads me to, well, okay, where are we now with Kamala Harris? Because at this point, now that she's the leader of the Democratic Party and she looks like she's going to be the nominee, there's going to be jockeying for a couple of things. For example, the VP spot. We'll come back to that in a second. But there's also jockeying for policy positions. So you guys had pushed the ball forward a little bit with Biden, and those things you mentioned are true, although he could barely say them out loud, in my opinion. So now, do you think Kamala Harris is going to pick up that ball and keep going in that progressive direction? Because there's going to be a lot of other forces, moderates, conservatives, telling her, don't do that.
Well, that's the big question. But she's had a conversation with Pramila Jayapal. My understanding is with Bernie Sanders. I personally haven't spoken to her yet, though I expect to over the next few days. Obviously, she's been busy. And that's going to be my conversation with her. I mean, I don't have any recommendation on who she should pick for VP, but I do have recommendations on what she should run on. And I would say you got to run on the rent caps. You've got to run on strengthening Social Security and Medicare. You've got to run on saying you shouldn't have to work in America and be poor at the same time, and we're going to increase living wage. And I would say to her, if you want any shot of getting the working class and some of the Scranton Joe working class that we're going to have to win, the best way to doing it is on a working class, middle class, economic populist agenda, and that you are helping reinvigorate the energy, the donors, the enthusiasm, but ultimately to win these swing states, we're going to need that. And then I would also advise her on Gaza to make some dramatic moves that signal that it's not going to be a continuation of the Biden policy of basically a bear hug of Netanyahu.
So really interesting on all those fronts. Let me ask you about 3 specific policies. I could ask about hundreds, but just as a kind of a sense of where things stand. First, on housing, private equity is buying up a lot of the houses in this country, and that's actually driving up the price of buying a house dramatically. Is there any discussion within the Democratic Party of stopping private equity from being able to do that?
Cenk, I don't know if that's a softball, but that's my bill in Congress. I mean, the Corporate Landlord Act that I introduced 2 years ago to stop private equity from buying single-family homes, to say that we should not be having any federal subsidies to have one of these private equity companies go into Las Vegas, go into Phoenix and buy up homes under $500,000. I often say we didn't fight a revolution in this country to be serfs to Wall Street. And so, I wish that Vice President Harris will adopt that and run on that. She doesn't have to credit the bill I introduced, but I think that'd be a great issue.
Yeah, well, I give you plenty of hardballs, so one softball every once in a while is not so bad. But in all seriousness, the reason I ask that is because I want to see, does that have a prayer? Because that could endanger some donor money, so it's going to be a problem, right? But that would be incredibly popular. And so I wonder, is there, I guess what I'm asking is there enough movement within the Democratic Party for that to not be a minority position within the party?
I think so. Look, the Vice President Harris is going to have a choice to make, and she's going to have those people whispering in her ear that her life story, which is very inspiring, her being a product of the American dream, her being a generational change, and her standing up for reproductive rights and painting Trump as doing Project 2025 is going to be enough to win the election. That is what she should focus on. Hammer abortion rights, hammer that Project 2025 is awful, which it is. Talk about her being the embodiment of the American dream, which she is. Her story is incredible, and let's run on that. And then there are going to be the progressives like me who say, no, that's not going to be enough to win this election. It's not going to be enough to convince the 50-year-old in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or in downriver Michigan that we need their vote or deserve their vote over Donald Trump, who's survived assassination, and for better or worse, his favorability numbers have gone up after that. And that's just a fact. That we have to have something concrete to offer them. And you got to run on an economic populist issue and agenda. And that's really, over the next couple of weeks, I think more than who she's going to pick as vice president is what kind of campaign is she going to run between those two choices. That's exactly what I'm trying to suss out here. Is $15 minimum wage dead, or is she ever going to come back and talk about that? I think she will definitely talk about that. Even Biden talked about that. But look, some of the folks who stuck with Biden, and I know there was a lot of the commentators on our progressive, our friends, didn't like it. We were sticking with him because we really were seeing him move, not on domestic foreign policy as much, but on domestic policy, to adopt a lot of what Bernie Sanders was campaigning on. That's my hope is, and expectation is, that Kamala Harris will continue in the direction Biden was going. And I don't know what you think, Jake, but I think she should run as an underdog. Not to. I think she may have a better chance than Biden because of the dynamics of that debate. But it would be a mistake for her to think that, okay, we're in the lead. We've raised $100 million, and I don't have to have a tough, bold economic agenda to win this race.
No, you're 100% right about that. I think she should go on the offense and stay there. And I don't think Biden moved nearly enough. We might disagree about that in terms of these economic issues, including $15 minimum wage. I think he barely did anything about it. But if she actually picks up that mantle, even if it's not true, just like with Biden, it's at least politically smart and strategic. I wish to God that it was true, right? But higher wages, doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's a good policy plank. But for a lot of Democrats, that's a bar too high. I'm just being honest with you, as you know. But that leads perfectly to the last policy question, which is paid family leave. You and I have talked about this before. It polls at 84%, 74% among Republicans. It's the biggest no-brainer in American politics, and yet absolutely nobody fights for it. It's just the craziest thing I've ever seen. So can we somehow get it to the Kamala Harris team? Please, just take the win. Take the win, do paid family leave. I love it. And I think it goes right to the JD Vance argument. We don't just say paid family leave. We say you can't be pro-family in this country and then expect people to work and not see their families. No American should have to work so much that if their kid is sick or if their parent needs them, that they aren't able to get off from work. No person should have to work so much that they are working and still are poor. And that's why under Democrats, we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage so you don't have to work and still be poor. And we're going to have paid family leave so you don't have to work when your kid is sick or your elderly parent needs you. I think that is such a common sense message. Like, I don't think that's easier to explain than Medicare for all, which I support. It's easier to explain than a wealth tax.
it's so common sense with the kids I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This should be, Kamala Harris should lead with that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Finally, the VP question. Is there a prayer of getting someone at least progressive adjacent as a VP? Maybe.
Who would that be? I mean, who do you think that is? And then I can tell you.
So I have you in the progressive camp, not the progressive adjacent camp.
Well, it's got to be someone. I mean, in the Midwest or one of those swing states. So I mean, or unless you have someone out of the box.
Yeah, my thought is out of the box. The person who is both progressive adjacent and all of mainstream Democrats are comfortable with, who's literally prosecuted a case against Donald Trump, and one of the smartest guys in the Democratic Party, Jamie Raskin. Unify a lot of Democrats in that direction.
I think Jamie would be a fantastic pick. I think Jamie. I mean, I love Jamie Raskin. I think that he would be terrific. You know, that's the kind of, also give moral direction to the campaign. I mean, that would be a thematic choice, a choice about where we want to go as a nation, more than, okay, I'm going to do the traditional balancing at the ticket and pick Roy Cooper. Or, you know, I'm not saying that that's a wrong pick, but that I love Jamie Raskin. I mean, he'd have my support, but we'll see what Kamala Harris does. But it's you know, I'm biased. He's one of my closest friends in Congress.
That speaks well of both of you. Okay, clear. Representative Khanna, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, appreciate it, Cenk.
All right, see you soon. All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick 1 minute break here. We're gonna come back with Adam Green from the Political Change Campaign Committee, and I wanna see, did I just say Political Change? Progressive Change Campaign Committee. And so we're gonna see, where do progressives go next from here? So come right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Normally we'd be doing a bonus episode for the members here. We are going to do one. Jordan Neal's going to come back, talk about these interviews that we're doing, and I'm gonna read some of your comments, some of the super chats, including ones that challenged me, are really interesting. And maybe we can squeeze in a story as well. So hit that join button below and become a member so you get that bonus episode. But first, let's do one more interview for you guys. Adam Green's the head of the PCCC, Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Adam, great to have you here. Obviously, we've got a new nominee now. I was hoping for an open convention, but that's not gonna happen. It looks like Kamala Harris already has enough delegates to be the nominee. So now that we've got a new nominee, what do progressives do going forward, and what's our priorities?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the vibes today feel much different than they did 48, 72 hours ago, don't they? So the first thing is get on board and take the W for a second. You know, this is a new environment where we have hope and change and all the good stuff on our side, momentum-wise. And I think the next thing for Kamala Harris is to, keep projecting the strength vibes and integrate strong policies into it. And the biggest thing I'm looking at is there a continuation of the path that Joe Biden has put us on when it comes to very good economic policy, including some big, Bernie Sanders priorities that were laid out in the last couple days before President Biden stepped aside. Things like expanding Medicare and Social Security, buying and then relieving medical debt, having a cap on rent inflation. All these things that Joe Biden has proposed will Vice President Harris continue down that road. If she does, if she keeps calling out greedy corporations who are trying to jack up prices on everything from gas to groceries to prescriptions to junk fees, that would be a very good sign. And unlike Biden, who had the media environment framed against him, she has the media environment on her side right now, and she can actually be heard.
So are we hopeful or not hopeful that she will actually hear that out and actually act strong? Because in the past, Adam, she hasn't been known as a pillar of strength. She has waffled on some policy issues. There's reporting that she's been a little bit nervous as vice president, but maybe you know something I don't inside Washington. Is there any chance she's receptive to progressive policies? Which again, in the past, sometimes she was and sometimes she wasn't. And is there any indication that she's got a newfound strength?
Yeah, so you and I both lived through the 2019-2020 primary, where it was a big question: what will each candidate support on each issue? This is a very different environment where there is already a Biden-Harris agenda, an agenda that progressives can be very proud that over the years, by moving the window of what's possible, we got things either passed or onto the radar, 1-2 votes away from passing. So I think she enters this moment feeling like that is her agenda. And secondly, the staff that she's inheriting, both the people that still support her at the White House and the people that she just met today for a deep conversation on the campaign, are all a continuation of Biden people who have been speaking the talking points of calling out greedy corporations that jack up prices, protecting Social Security and not giving tax breaks to billionaires. So I would be shocked if there was some kind of culture shift where she decided to intervene on behalf of billionaires and against Social Security and for greedy corporations. I think that the glide path is there, the team is there. She has a self-identity that's with the Biden-Harris agenda. And her very first speech today from the White House, her first public appearance on anything, she used to pay homage to Joe Biden. So I'd be shocked if she undermined his agenda. The real question to me is, will she be vocal for it and actually move the ball forward beyond it, keep going in the direction that he's begun, and maybe even be a little bit more bold? We'll see.
But Adam, so I don't know, man. I live in a different bubble. So like Biden did about 15% of his agenda. Sometimes it sounds like he did, like when I talk to people in DC, 150% of his agenda. He didn't do a huge amount of things that we asked him to do. And at the end, okay, well, let's put bygones be bygones. Let's look at the future. At the end here, the baton he's passing off that you're excited about, I really couldn't tell what his agenda was because I couldn't hear anything he was saying. He just constantly mumble. So when Kamala Harris says it out loud, I'm ready to be excited, but what should I be excited about? What are, give me a couple of policies that you think Kamala Harris is actually going to advocate for that's relatively progressive, not just generically against billionaires or whatever, but what policies do we have to look forward to?
Well, actually, first, let me start with the generic, because I think there might be a slight differentiation between the direction the Democratic Party has gone rhetorically, policy-wise, and then some of the specifics of what we've gotten across the finish line, right? So I'm very proud that we worked for months with the White House, asking them to use a certain framing of Social Security and taxation, which basically boils down to Republicans want to cut Social Security in order to give tax cuts to the very wealthy, while Democrats want to tax the very wealthy and protect Social Security. That's a rubric that Joe Biden laid out in the State of the Union after months of engagement, and then continually on the campaign trail in swing states. I would be shocked if Kamala Harris did not continue that. But you lived through the Obama days when Democrats were willing to cut Social Security. So that's actually major progress. Then the question is, what taxes on the wealthy do we raise? And if we want to expand benefits, what additional taxes on the wealthy do we raise? I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care for campaign purposes. I want to give voice to the agenda of taxing billionaires and the super wealthy, insisting they pay their fair share, and protecting and expanding Social Security. And we can figure out the details in governing mode. Similarly with costs, right? Like this idea that greedy corporations are jacking up prices on everything from groceries to gas, to prescriptions, to bank fees. Like those are policies to me. The willingness of this president in the State of the Union to actually call out corporate villains and say they are jacking up your prices was important. And yeah, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Federal Trade Commission can work out the specific details of what executive actions they're taking. And we can write laws if we're so fortunate as to have a trifecta in 2025. But it's really important that we make that case to the American people, both to prevent bad things from being on the agenda and also to lay the groundwork for good things. So I might be a little bit less pessimistic from you. And honestly, at this point, I want to win. And I believe that progressive ideas are popular. I think we need to talk about them in layman's terms. And I don't want to talk about earned income tax credits for people making X, Y, or Z amount. I want to talk about tax the rich, save Social Security, crack down on greedy corporations that are jacking up prices and taking money out of your family budgets, and leave the details to governing. That's my point of view. I don't know if you disagree with that one.
No, I agree. So look, I want the audience to understand a couple of things. So number one, we all care about winning. And once we win, that's where Adam and I continue to agree, but some diverge and say, well, let's not be too tough on the president and blah, 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 blah. No, you have to use your leverage after you win to try to actually get these policies. But for God's sake, yes, at least say progressive things so you can win. Especially on economic issues. On economic progressive issues, poll so well, it would be political malpractice not to use them on the campaign trail. And then, look, I think we're both right in different directions on execution once they are in charge. Like price gouging, you're right. We should call out price gouging by corporations, and I'm glad that you're pushing them in that direction. Will they actually do anything about it? My opinion is no way. Okay, I know corporate Democrats. They're not going to do anything. On the other hand, I'll finish the thought here. Adam's group, PCCC, and Adam himself have been pushing the framing on Social Security should be increased rather than cut for now arguably decades. And they've done a terrific job of moving the ball on that. So understand that when he says that, there are real tangible results he's gotten out of it, and we've got, as a movement, have gotten out of that as well. So it does. So my point is, sometimes incrementalism is correct and framing is really important, and sometimes you just need to actually do something. Both of those things are true depending on the context.
Yeah. So look, I would differentiate between congressional Democrats and the administration using their power. I am not one to defend those who are not willing to use power, but I think you would agree that Lina Khan as FTC chair has been like the high watermark of what is possible. Maybe even pushing beyond what most people thought was possible in terms of cracking down on monopolies and corporate power, right? Blocking mergers, taking on grocery stores that want to merge together and jack up grocery prices, taking on Amazon. The DOJ under similar people like Jonathan Cantor are taking on Microsoft, taking on Google, right? Rohit Chopra at the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, has actually passed laws that say credit card companies cannot charge exorbitant credit card fees. That is now the law. They're doing things on many types of fees that you would see in consumer finance, cracking down on people that just abuse customers. So that to me is what, that to me is promises fulfilled. What I hear you saying is, well, there's other powers that could be unlocked if Congress actually got their act together. Again, I would love to live in a world where we have a Democratic trifecta and we have Democratic infighting and disarray over how much should we hold corporations accountable. But if we get to that world, I agree with you. Like there will be some people that, block progress like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema did. But the thing I would say to your audience is there's a big difference between having a bullet point on a website and having robust campaigning on the campaign trail. To his credit, Joe Biden tried to give voice to things like not cutting Social Security, taxing billionaires, cracking down on greedy corporations. If Kamala Harris decides to give voice to those same things, she will be a very vibrant voice. And I think we can all look forward to that. So I think any of us that ever have a chance in our home states of asking her a question or asking local House or Senate candidates questions, get them on the record. Have them talking about the importance of saving Social Security and taxing billionaires or cracking down on price gouging. We've pulled it. Price gouging, even those words, I thought they were wonky. We actually tested jacking up prices versus price gouging. Price gouging did better. So we could just go to town hall meetings and ask any House or Senate candidate or Kamala Harris, if she's in town, what will you do to crack down on corporations that are greedy and price gouge consumers? And if she says something, that's a moment on CNN and it's more for self-identity. So I think all of us can play a role in helping all the Democrats be more robust on these issues that you and I know are popular.
Yeah, this is a great point. And by the way, also, if you can, go to her to talk about the 15% minimum tax that they put on corporations, because that's actually one of the best things that the Biden administration has done and separates them from the corporate giveaways that Donald Trump did when he was president. Okay, so last thing though, Adam, is about the VP slot. If you had your druthers, who would you pick for Kamala Harris's VP?
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that it would be electric to have an all-female ticket. I would love a Kamala Harris, Gretchen Whitmer ticket. There might be other people that would also be electrifying in a good way. Gretchen Whitmer today put a little bit of a cold water on that. I actually, similar to Joe Biden saying he wouldn't run and then, or wouldn't step down and then stepping down, I think she's possibly amenable if offered. But here's an analysis I think you would appreciate. I think that if Kamala Harris chooses, say a white male who's boring like Tim Kaine, because she feels she has to, that feels weak. It feels like she's compensating. Now, if she loves the person, or if it's a Jamie Raskin, or for somebody who she genuinely adores and America adores, great. But if she does it because she feels she's obliged to compensate, that doesn't project strength. It projects weakness. I love the idea of saying, you know what, we're doubling down. Two strong women, someone like Gretchen Whitmer, who has made the case for economic populism in her home state, made the case for democracy, made the case for abortion rights, would be a fantastic addition to the ticket. So I just hope that she doesn't do something out of weakness. I hope she chooses the VP out of strength. And I think no matter what, we should be there to support her and to be enthusiastic that we have the wind at our back and we should take the fight to Trump and beat him and save democracy.
Yeah, I like the idea of doubling down a lot. And it partly because I think picking two women is actually a bold and correct and smart move, but also because it shows strength. And it says, I'm not backing down from anything. I'm going to double down. And so I like that idea a lot. Now, you're the second person in a row to say Jamie Raskin. I like that idea a lot. So that's another possibility. There are some choices that would be less exciting, like Pete Buttigieg or someone along those lines. But let's keep the excitement going. Let's have a good, strong pick. I agree with you. Don't do it out of weakness or because you felt like you had to for some BS reasons. Pick the person who's going to be the strongest fighter for this ticket. And the people that you mentioned are perfectly good for that.
And can I say one more word on that?
Yeah.
So today I asked someone on our staff at boldprogressives.org to do some research on what people like Andy Beshear and Roy Cooper from Kentucky and North Carolina, respectively, have been saying. I was really curious, what language do they use when they talk about the economy, democracy, abortion rights? I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised by Roy Cooper in North Carolina. I was expecting that he'd have, given a very Republican legislature, have really kind of catered to a conservative audience. And I was finding myself agreeing with, not just his positions, but the language he used. It was bold, it was strong. Andy Beshear, who I actually like personally, I went to law school with him. I think he was catering to a Kentucky crowd. He was using abortion language that reminded me of Bill Clinton in 1992, keeping abortion rare and stuff like that. And as much as I believe that he's a talented politician and would be a fantastic cabinet member somewhere, what I worry about is picking someone who actually isn't ready for the big stage when it comes to this moment where folks like us have done so much to move the conversation. And if we have somebody who's kind of unfortunately trapped in a state where they've been speaking 20, 30 years ago language, that would just not serve Kamala Harris well. So again, I think someone like Rachel Whitmer, Jamie Harris, maybe even Roy Cooper would be great. And I hope she, again, operates out of strength, not weakness.
Yeah, I agree. And don't do it based on superficial things like North Carolina, Kentucky, et cetera. And you're right, Roy Cooper is an interesting person. In fact, at the RNC, a couple of people were like, I hope you guys don't pick Roy Cooper when we had the conversation about potential Kamala Harris at the top and someone else's VP. And he's gotten some things done in North Carolina, even with a Republican legislature. So there's a lot of good, interesting choices. We're all crossing our fingers that Kamala Harris goes in the smart, strong, strategic direction that Adam's laying out here. All right, everybody check out boldprogressives.org. Adam, thank you for joining us, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick break here. For all the members, stay right here. We're gonna break down those two interviews. I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. Some quick comments from you guys, including some super chats, and then we'll see if we can squeeze in one more interesting story for you guys. So hit the join button below to become a member, and we'll see you there.